On the 13th of January 2024, Impact Wrestling rebranded as TNA Wrestling for the first time in 7 years. This sense of nostalgia has caused two comedians to go back to where it all began, back to the Nashville Fairgrounds, back to the Asylum, to see where it all kicked off. Join them now to spend the next 114 episodes escaping the Asylum.
Next week, right here on TNA, we're going to have a championship match with a gentleman by the name of...
I give to you my NWA World Tag Team Champion!
I'm not sure when you face the Johnsons, you really know who you're facing in the
Scott
ring.
Hall, nobody wants to see you, nobody wants to hear you. Shamrock! Whoa! And he's wearing what I want, and I'm about to show you how I'm gonna get it.
I want to make a midget bleed tonight.
I'm telling you, that bump has ruined my career, and I don't want no part of it.
Need to fear Malice!
Not going on tonight, but all I'm going to do is find a partner, and then I can play.
I guess Ferrari's never going to learn.
I don't give a damn about race car driving, and none of these damn idiots give a damn about race car driving.
I have to confess not to have heard a single solitary word that you just said. I'm so taken aback by your beauty.
The NWA has ruled that they must have opponents for this finals match.
I beat your ass in 95. I beat your ass in 97. I ran your ass out of WCW. The boys up north ran you off out of WWF. And I'm gonna single-handedly run you out of the NWA.
Hey, it's LJ, and welcome to another episode of Escaping the Asylum, the podcast where two comedians are going back through all the original weekly pay-per-views from the NWA TNA. And yeah, this one's a doozy. This is the first appearance of the NWA tag team titles. We will get into that very shortly, but before I talk about the event, I've got to talk about the man who is willingly giving up his time to join me here. He's from Hypothetical Comedy and the Pro Wrestling Nation. Is Mr. Funky Sam Medina. How we doing?
Yo. What is up, man? I'm doing good. How are you?
Bit under the weather, but you know, these things come and go. It's last few days here in the UK, it's been sunglasses weather, which, you know, you don't really think. You think sunglasses, you think, it's getting close to summer. But no, it's the end of February, which means sunglasses weather is also overcoat weather. Something I didn't account for recently, which is, I think, part of why I'm feeling a bit under the weather.
Oh, man, that's wild. Sunglass and overcoat, that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I know over there in California, you know, you don't have
it's shorts weather all year round. Sometimes.
Yeah, you got anything going on before we sort of move on to the business at hand?
No, nothing really super like immediate coming up. Like, I always got cool comedy shows going on. Just, you know, hit up my Instagram, and if you're in the Bay Area, follow me, and we'll do some business.
Well, with all the formalities out of the way, I guess we should just start on with the show, and we're going to crack on with the news for this week in the NWA TNA timeline. So, there's a couple of sort of interesting things. No sort of major news at this point. I mean, there is... going through Jarrett's book, he sort of brings up, you know, there seems to be some disparities between what he's being told by the pay-per-view distributors and what's happening with regards to the online fandom. That will, of course, we'll expand on that over the next couple of episodes as we go more into the deteriorating relationship between him and Jay Houseman and where that goes.
Man, that's gonna be fun.
See, I was reading some more about it today, and I don't think it's going to be as interesting as I first thought it was. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping that there is more to it. But I've actually reached out to an old lawyer compadre of mine from the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast. So if he's about, he he's going to try and help out if I can get hold of him. So,
Oh, awesome. Shed some light on the subject.
yeah, I figure. I mean, I don't know about your expertise, but I dealt with civil law in the UK for a few years, but I figured someone who knows something about this, and I might also get him to help with the health sale stuff when that comes up in a couple of months. Maybe,
Yeah.
just sort of a bit of expert opinion, because we're trying to be quite thorough with some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my personal knowledge, all I know is that I'm not friendly with anybody with the last name Hausman.
Fair enough. Also, as a result of there being concern over the actual pay-per-view buy rates, because they've, as of this point in the timeline, they've not actually been confirmed by In Demand. Jarrett is looking into maybe sort of focusing on, well, he gets a little further down the line, he gets the syndicated show Explosion, and this is where at this point he's starting to sort of think about it, just so he has like that extra advertising coming out each
Yeah,
week.
to get something actually on TV and get
And
those commercial dollars.
yeah, and the person he goes to is an interesting choice, because the person he talks about getting possible time on cable systems is Eric Bischoff.
Oh, well, I
Yeah,
mean, Eric Bischoff does know a thing or two about that.
he does. To be honest, I think Bischoff is quite reluctant, because Jerry has said some quite negative things about him in a couple of recent sort of interviews he's done, and so that relationship may or may not be starting. But that also may be the reason that we see Mr. Bischoff and the hug that burnt millions of dollars in the middle of the ring on Raw in a few weeks. So that this may or may not be the catalyst for that.
Wow.
Just a couple of other sort of small things that happened this week. Jim Hall at onewrestling.com put up quite a negative
Oh,
article.
I remember onewrestling.com. I used to go to that website all the time in this time frame.
Yeah, so Jim Hall did quite a negative article. I think it was the first show we mentioned this, but Ed Ferrara said something about the Special Olympics. I didn't repeat it because, quite frankly, I thought it was quite abhorrent what he said, and Jim Hall felt the same, and did an article on what was wrong with it and why it shouldn't have been said.
Yeah,
Fortunately,
well, I mean, after 3 episodes, I don't think I've agreed with one thing Ed Ferrara has said.
worryingly, there are some things on this episode I've omitted from the play-by-play, but I sort of listened and was like, yeah, no, he's got a point there. I mean, well, you said the Elvises should have got consideration in the X title match, which he's
he was arguing for that. He was arguing for that.
Although I actually was skimming through a couple of the results in the near future, they do get quite prominently featured in the X title scene in the next sort of few weeks. But we'll get to that as it comes out.
But I feel like as commentary, he should not argue that, because he needs to go along with the narrative on the show. Like, I can argue that, but if he argues it, then I think he's wrong about the Elvises being considered for the X Division title match.
I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to do like the face heel dynamic, which
they are, and he's way too heel.
Yeah, but yeah, so TNA actually do handle this situation quite effectively. I feel as soon as the article goes, as soon as the word of the article gets back to Jarrett, they put out a public apology, and they actually make Ferrara do like a thorough sort of apology and an explanation that he understands what he did was wrong, and he should have thought more. And
did they do that on the weekly pay-per-view?
I don't believe that was
public press release.
That was just a public press release they did, but
okay.
But it was one. But people sort of looked at that and go, okay, they are treating this the right way, and as long as he doesn't do anything that stupid again.
I wouldn't mind seeing Ferrari get pulled from commentary.
He does get pulled quite, not actually I've not got to that point in Jarrett's book where if it's brought up why, but yeah, we will not. He is not long for this world. The only other thing I've got here is I've written Buff Gone Well. I think we're probably going to go more into it on the episode itself, but let's just say Jarrett wasn't impressed with Buff's interview that he cut before his tag title match. He's apparently had to do 5 takes, and what we got is the best of the 5. Although Buff's recent sort of coming out about his issues with his personal demons, that may have played into it, because at the time he was doing a lot of like drugs and alcohol. This is when he really started to sort of lose himself into that, so that may have influenced that in hindsight. But yeah, Jerry wasn't impressed with what Buff was doing, and also Buff, despite being relatively positive to the program that was being presented to him over the phone, on the day he asked to go through it with Jarrett one more time. So Jerry said, "Okay, well, this is what we're doing. You know, this is the sort of timeline we're looking at." And Buff pulled out the classic, "No, that doesn't work for me, brother."
Yeah, he's the stuff. He can say that.
Yeah, Jarrett didn't appreciate that, which I can kind of understand, to be fair. And as a result, yeah, the Bagwell literally makes 2 more appearances over the next 12 months, I think. So that is why. So yeah, that's all the news I sort of have coming into this episode of TNA. Before I actually go to the episode itself, I sort of like to kind of throw out there the lay of the land of at least what the entertainment world was doing in 2000, because it was a different time, you know. Like the girls, all the bad guys they were watching wrestling, thinking hard about tough guys, and listening to a lot of rap metal, or at least I've come to believe from a popular sonnet of the time. What else was going on in the music world? I've got what was topping the charts. So if I just spin this little number. Over in the States, topping the charts of the weekend before this pay-per-view was a brand new number 1. It's not a fancy anymore. It is Hot in Here by Nelly.
That's funny.
I remember that one. It's certainly, I'm not a big sort of hip hop guy, but this one sort of sticks in your head, right, for either the right reasons or the wrong reasons. It's not one I'm a particularly big fan of. What about you?
I don't know. I mean, it's not really my style.
Yeah. When it comes to the album charts in the US, it was still the Eminem Show, the highest selling album of that year, sold 809,000 units. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong week. So it sold 529,562,000 units this week.
Wow.
And
good album though. Good album.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not. I might actually have to look into this, because I did quite like the stuff Eminem was doing around this time. You know what? I think when I said I thought this was the greatest hits, I think the greatest hits is called Encore. I think I'm mixing the two up. So I think I actually have.
No, actually, Encore is not the greatest hits either. The greatest hits is called Curtain Call.
Okay. Well, I knew. Yeah, because I knew there was like the trio. So I've definitely okay. I don't know if I've heard Encore, but I think I own this album.
Encore is like the best. Encore is like his best album.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yeah, when he did like the albums over the past 10 years or so, I've sort of kind of heard a couple of tracks from them, and it's just like it's not the same. Which is a shame, because like all these sort of anti-Trump stuff I think is brilliant, but yeah, just none of the singles have sort of resonated with me. But maybe it's just because I'm the different person to when he was one of the biggest artists in the world. Over here in the UK again, the Eminem Show is topping our album charts, and I think here in the UK, even though we couldn't get TNA, we were ready for at least the concept, because once again, topping our charts is a little less conversation, which is what TNA promised in so many of its in so many of its press releases. Whether they delivered or not is kind of up for debate. But yeah, that was Elvis Presley, the JXL remix, which those who don't know, it was part of an advertising campaign. I think it was tied in with the World Cup that year. I think it was like a Nike one, and it was like this advert. The concept was like it was like a secret football tournament held on a barge in the middle of the ocean, and you just had like loads of top footballers of the day. And it was really cool advert, and the song just went really well with it. And but unfortunately, they just stopped sales of the song for some reason. It's probably out there, but due to the fact it doesn't play a great any sort of impact on the TNA stuff, I've not really looked into it. So moving away from the world of music and moving into the world of films and movies. What's topping the box office in the US this particular weekend? It was Mr. Deeds.
Oh no, not Mr. Deeds.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Just over $37 million at the box office that weekend.
That's kind of the time frame where I really stopped being into Adam Sandler movies.
No, it's weird. I don't think I really saw many Adam Sandler movies until he started sort of getting bad, and the things I saw. So I saw like a lot of them around the same sort of time, and which means I saw a lot of good and a lot of bad at the same time. So I think I missed out on the hype because of that. Because if you watch, I'm blanking on the golf one, but if you watch that with Little Nicky, it's a case of, well, the golf one's pretty good, but that Little Nicky film's no. Although I do still like The Longest Yard, but that might just be because of
Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore are like two of the greatest movies ever made.
Yeah, Happy Gilmore. That's it. Yes, I don't think I've seen Billy Madison. I've seen I've seen at least half his films, and some of them are fine, some of them are less than fine. Sadly, more leaning towards one camp than the other.
Oh, I never saw Mr. Deeds, and I never saw like Anger Management. And then I saw Punch Drunk Love like years and years later. So this is kind of the time frame where I really like got off the Adam Sandler train, I think.
So over here in the UK, once again, it's still Spider-Man topping our charts here in the UK. Took just over £2.5 million this particular week. So yeah,
Spider-Man's cool.
It is. I definitely prefer the Raimi movies to the Andrew Garfield movies. Although nothing beats the Spider-Verse films. I'm just going to say
I haven't seen the new ones yet. I still kind of want to, but I kind of also don't.
I'm talking the cartoon ones, the Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, like the most recent ones I saw are like the Tobey Maguire ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything past like Spider-Man 3. And that was like in 2006 or something.
So when me and my wife said we're going to watch the latest Tom Holland one, because we knew all the old ones coming back, she's not seen the Andrew Garfield one. So we sat down and just over the span of a week or two, we're going to rewatch like all the 5 Spider-Man films. And just halfway through Spider-Man 3, we were just like, no, this one's just too bad. It's not even that the story's bad, it's everything about it seems off. Just the way that the actors are compared to the previous 2 films, it just doesn't quite sit right.
Maybe that's why I stopped liking that franchise.
Yeah. But yeah, in my opinion, the 2 Spider-Verse films are probably the best Spider-Man films. I mean, if you go by box office take, Tom Holland ones are, but it's all subjective, I guess. Unless you like the Andrew Garfield ones, at which point, I'm sorry, you're wrong.
Yeah, just like wrestling.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, that's what was going on in the entertainment world. Points you sort of said you don't believe that the WWF was trying to counter program TNA. At other times you said, okay, yeah, no, that one is just to screw with them. So I think they have been trying to counter program it, but sometimes they've just been doing it badly. So let's have a look at
I
what
mean,
was going.
okay, I can see that, but I honestly feel like they're not much more than a little blip on the radar.
True, but when you
There's
consider
no threat
it's
there yet.
well, on the other hand, when you consider it's Jerry Jarrett, Vince is obviously going to pay attention, even if he's not claiming to
Yeah, I
be.
mean that's
Yeah.
true. I'm sure Vince knows what Jerry Jarrett's capable of. Plus, I mean, we all kind of know in retrospect that a lot of things that Vince McMahon did were out of spite. So I'm sure he'll be looking for a good reason to have some spite. So maybe.
So the Raw this week is one we've actually been kind of sort of building up to for a few weeks. But yeah, we'll get to why in just a second. But so yeah, it starts out with Lesnar is doing an open challenge because obviously Angle did the one the last week. And Lesnar's challenge is answered by no other than Ric Flair. So we get Flair beating Lesnar after Heyman breaks up the figure four. So failure of the F4 led to the F5. Bit of poetic something there, I think, maybe. I don't know. Jackie Gator and Molly Holly have a disagreement over the Divas dress thing, but I'm not going to go into it because I don't care. And Trish comes in at the end and pulls down Molly's pants because,
Oh
again,
man, wow.
yeah. So we have an interview with Chris Nowinski where he says he doesn't want the hardcore title because he doesn't want to be looking over his shoulder the whole time, which is completely understandable. And he then beats Bradshaw with a bell shot when the referee's not looking in just a regular non-title match.
Christopher Nowinski's like, I don't want the hardcore title because I don't want my career to end because of concussions. Too soon?
Well, I mean, we're 6 months away from that. But do you remember what actually happened to cause that initial concussion?
I don't know.
No, it's when I was doing the social media for the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast, I'd watch most of the pay-per-views and then do a review of them.
Sorry to hear that. I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, there's a reason we stopped doing that podcast. In its case, some of those pay-per-views in 2003 were getting rough. But yeah, so it's the Rumble 2003 where I actually have this. I can't remember if it's Mysterio or Edge, but I think it's like a top rope drop kick or something, and he goes down, but the way he lands, he gets like Edge's knee in the face or something. It really does not look good. And he's like eliminated like less than a minute later, and that's where all his concussion problems start.
Wow. That's crazy. And then like some people are just more prone to him, I guess, than others too, right?
I mean, I guess it's also, I mean, I guess your body's metabolism would play a part in that, yeah.
Because like once he got him, he just kept getting them.
Yeah.
And that's what I heard about Christian when he retired too, that he just kept getting concussions. But maybe his body, since he was rested for so many years, his body was able to like heal itself. I don't know.
Yeah, I heard something. We say that, but his AEW career, that's had injury problems.
Oh my gosh, his AEW career is like the best thing that he's ever done. His AEW career is so amazing. His promo work is like untouchable. His in-ring work is great.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I've
no,
seen
I'm so
I've
happy
seen
that
some
he's
of
had a
his
second.
I've seen some of his promo
Yeah.
work. And yeah, that just like the despicableness of him is just it's magnifique. But yeah, between those two Jack Perry matches he had, that there was 6 months where he wasn't doing anything because he was injured. But
Yeah, there was a big time.
But I think he was
Big
still on
amount of
TV
time.
for a lot of that, so you didn't really pick up on it as
Yeah,
much.
because he was mostly in Jungle Boy's corner for a lot of time when he wasn't wrestling, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway.
So yeah, next up we have Van Dam arriving at the arena. He wants Lesnar, but Lesnar's just had a match, so they give him William Regal instead. Then we have Goldust doing a skit as Darth Vader, and apparently Booker T's never seen Star Wars, but does like the lightsabers. Hey, Jules just wasn't my C-man, and I've never seen Star Wars, as Freddie Mercury once said. Uh, then
What's
we get a
that,
bit.
sucker?
Uh, then we get Eddie's in Vince's office. In comes Benoit. He's now officially been drafted to Raw, but Vince needs to work out a trade to make up for that, which doesn't make sense because it's no longer a dual owner thing. But what's logic in WWE in 2002, I guess.
I
So
mean, any
RVD,
year really, but yeah.
yeah. So RVD beats Regal in a fairly decent match. And that leads to Van Dam and Lesnar being signed for vengeance for the IC title.
All right, RVD.
Yeah. So next we have Bubba Ray Dudley and Spike beating Eddie Guerrero and Benoit in Benoit's first match in just over a year.
Wow.
Before the SmackDown 6 starts, these two guys have it pretty rough. But yeah, but after the match, Spike gets thrown through a table, and it's something that's a bit sort of weird to look at now. Bubba ends in the crossface, that changes to Benoit choking him, and in retrospect, that's a bit dark watching back now. I feel so. We'll move on from that. Next up, we have Goldust getting beat up in the back by Big Show and Kevin Nash. Because the NWO was still, I doing these reviews makes me just surprised at how long the NWO was still around in 2002. Because I know it just gets cut off suddenly, and I know I'm fairly sure I remember exactly when because I would have done the review for the rest of 20 years ago podcast. But
I don't know if you know this or not, but when you're NWO for life. Just saying.
actually, that reminds me of. I've not seen the clip, but Lacey Von Erich, she does these weird
Absolutely.
YouTube. Yeah, apparently
I don't
there's.
really know about her YouTube escapades though. I don't really know what she does on YouTube. Is it interesting?
It's weird. I saw one the other day where she met Ted DiBiase. I don't think she knows who half these people are, but she does them at like wrestling conventions. And
Is it
Ted.
recent stuff or is it older stuff?
Ah, it's not that old.
Okay.
It's definitely within the last 10 years or so. But
Okay.
like this
That's
one I
cool.
watched the other day, she met Ted DiBiase. He was wearing like a WWE shirt, and she was just like, WWE, and he's like, yeah, yeah. And she's like, oh, they killed my family, but it's fine because they're my family, so I can say that. It's just like that.
Oh my gosh, I'm sort of laugh about that, but
That's just.
I really wanted Lacey Von Erich to succeed in wrestling. When she did show up in TNA eventually, let's just say I thought she was very, very attractive.
That's a fair assessment. But yeah, so the one I heard with Kevin Nash was he was, a convention wearing an NWO shirt, and she was just like, "Oh, do you wrestle there?" I can just picture Nash's face. You can probably just picture Nash's reaction, and apparently I've pretty much pictured it right from what the person
Oh
telling
yeah,
me.
Nash has no problem telling somebody you're an idiot or whatever he has to say.
He didn't. I don't think he's verbalized it, but it's just the look on his face. It's just like.
Oh my
But
gosh.
apparently, she has fans who think this stuff she does is amazing. It's like, which is,
Yeah, everybody does. Everybody
yeah,
has weird fans. I guess not everybody, but all the wrestlers,
yeah,
especially the female wrestlers, have weird fans. But
yeah,
yeah, that's cool though. I'm glad that she's doing stuff. I could just picture her walking around introducing herself to everybody as Carrie Von Erich's daughter. Hey, I'm Texas Tornado's daughter. Texas Tornado's daughter. What's up? I'm Texas Tornado's daughter.
mm. So the next segment on Raw we have is a short interview with the Undertaker, where he says he's prepared for his upcoming match, and JR's like, "Well, are you nervous about your first ladder match?" And he just sort of walks out. Next, we have it was supposed to be a tag match with Booker and Goldust facing Show and X-Pac, but Goldust just got taken out, so it's Booker and Show one-on-one. And yeah, Show gets counted out. Booker leaves through the crowd, and then in the back afterwards, Nash beats down on Show for losing. HBK sort of comes in to try and cool things down and says, "Don't worry, we're going to have Triple H joining us soon," and then kicks Show in the face because why not?
The NWO is so complicated in the WWE.
So there was this infamous tour over here a few years ago. It was Hall, Nash, and X-Pac, and it was like this just terribly planned from the start. But because I was with Wrestle Talk, we got invited to the London show, so we sort of turned up. We took one look around and said, "Okay, we're not. Well, let's just leave the cameras in the car because we don't want to be associated with this." Despite the fact they just sponsored us for the last 2 weeks, but we're just like, but yeah, Nash on that tour, he was talking about NWO, and it's like within a 2 or 3 weeks, like the NWO t-shirt was like one of the highest selling ones on WWEshop.com. And he thinks that, well, WWFshop.com it would have been at the time. And he was just like, oh, hang on a minute, this is a good sign. And that's about the time the wheels started falling off the whole thing. And he was just, that was like a story about a show about they were messing around with like a tag match, and somehow one of them got pinned in like a meaningless match, and was like, well, that's kind of hampering our momentum a bit, isn't it? And it's just like, okay, well, this is where it ends. And yeah, that's the point where apparently it's all fell off a cliff, which, yeah, it's the whole theory of if Vince didn't create it, he will try and kill it.
Yeah.
So last on this episode of Raw, we have the Jeff Hardy Undertaker ladder match. Do you remember this?
Oh,
what
absolutely. Yeah. Climb the ladder, boy. Make yourself famous.
Yeah, I'm trying, because I know I must have watched it somewhere in the last couple of years, because I'm pretty sure I did a piece on the rest of 20 years ago, social media about it, but it's not a bad match, but it is largely just the Undertaker bumping Hardy around a lot until that final bit that you sort of mentioned there.
I mean, that's kind of the whole psychology of the match, is that the Undertaker has the experience, he has the power, he has pretty much every advantage except for the ladder. That's Jeff Hardy's advantage because that's his expertise.
Yeah. But yeah, it was still, I mean, it was one of those moments of you didn't think it was going to happen until right at the end. It's like, oh, maybe they are going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And then that's finished. And it's like, okay. But still, Hardy does the thing where he sort of gets on the mic and he's like, look, I'm not down yet. And eventually, the Undertaker just sort of has to raise his hand in respect and kind of cements.
I mean, it really cemented Jeff Hardy as a major player.
Yeah, which is sad because he kind of a few months later, it's where he starts kind of falling off a cliff on a personal level. No, quite the same.
A lot of pressure,
Yeah. So moving on to the SmackDown taping. So the SmackDown taping, of course, would happen the night before TNA, but would air the night afterwards. And so this particular week, it would be the 4th of July it aired on. So, as is tradition in the WWF or WWE or whichever one, when they're doing anything America related or any sort of big event, it starts with a singing of America the Beautiful done by the lovely Lillian Garcia. Although she doesn't get to finish the song as Lance Storm Christian and Tess come out to interrupt, which they're not called the Un-Americans at this point, but yeah, that's where this is going.
I was a huge fan of the Un-Americans. Going into the storyline, Christian, William Regal, Lance Storm are some of my favorite wrestlers, and I really got behind the anti-American um just push, just because I know what wrestling means to America, and I know what it means to other countries, and I agree too that America's kind of, at least maybe in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, was kind of like inferior in a way. And so it was just really fun. It was a really fun storyline. Heels that were kind of telling the truth and being heely and being assholes. But yeah, it was good. It was a good storyline. The Un-Americans.
Well, I mean, the best heel work comes from when there's like a grain of truth in it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know why this is the one that's coming to me, but like the Chris Jericho Shawn Michaels feud of 2008, there was just something in that in Jericho's work in that's like that so much of it is just was layered with a hint of truth that you're like, I can completely understand why you're so upset in this situation, but the way you're going about it, I still want to cheer the other guy.
There's also a claim to be made for heel work, completely opposite. That's completely untrue, and silly. Like one of my favorite promos of all time is when Bret Hart said, "The United States is shaped like a giant toilet bowl, and the flusher is right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania."
But again, I mean, yeah, but again, like the basic gimmick of that was still the America Canada thing, and a lot of the other stuff that Hart was saying with that was true.
A lot of it was true. Yeah, you're right on that too.
Yeah,
I'm pro Canada and anti-America. Sorry, everybody. Especially when it comes to wrestling.
I remember Droz. I used to read his column on WWF.com, and he had this theory that there was something in the water in Canada that kept producing like brilliant technical wrestlers, and it's like, well, I mean, we've got Test on the roster, but other than that, yeah, you have enough there to have an argument.
What's funny is there might be, because there's a little Minnesota is right underneath Canada, and Minnesota is also famous for a lot of legendary wrestlers too. So maybe they're drinking from the same lake.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota. Most of the Minnesotans are trained by the same guy.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
blew my
right.
mind that like someone like Austin Aries was taught by the same guy who taught Kurt Hennig. I was just like, but they're like decades apart. But it's the
Really?
same.
I
Yeah,
didn't know that. Who?
I
It's
cannot
not
think of his
Vern.
name.
It's not
Yeah,
Vern, right?
it's not Vern. No, I can't think of the guy's name. But
So I know Vern
one
trained a
thing,
lot of those guys in Minnesota.
I mean, he obviously had relationships with Vern because he got
Yeah.
because I think that's I was going to say that's where they got the Road Warriors from, but the Road Warriors went to, I think, Georgia first. But I do know that the guy who trained him, he was a former wrestler, but a lot of his training technique was him just sitting in a chair yelling at them in the ring, which,
Yeah, a lot of wrestlers that weren't super successful became, really good trainers.
hmm,
They say those who can do, those who can't teach.
yeah. But yeah, no, this guy, he was just like, well, I could get in there with them, but they don't know what they're doing yet. I'm not risking my neck. So he literally sat in a chair, just yelled at them till he was sort of like, okay, I feel you're good enough that I can put my body in your hands. You can take the other trainees from day one, but me, no, you got to wait for that, which is not a bad attitude to have if you want to keep your neck in one piece. So I'm not going to hold that against him. So yeah, first match of SmackDown we have Lance Storm beating Rikishi after Test interferes with the big boot.
Oh, hey, I'm gonna stop you for a second. Eddie Sharkey is the person who trained Austin Aries, and I don't know if Eddie Sharkey trained Kurt Hennig, but Eddie Sharkey is a very, very, very famous for training people, and he trained a lot of people.
Yeah, no, yeah, that is right. Yeah, no, you saying that has made the name sort of clock. Yeah, no, he is the guy who
Yeah, there's a huge
trained.
list. If you go on Wikipedia for Eddie Sharkey, there's like a tab that says wrestlers trained, and there's a huge list.
Yeah, there's some great names there. You've got like X-Pac, Jerry Lynn, the Road Warriors, Kurt Hennig, um, Rick Rude.
Steiners.
Yeah. You want to know a random fact about talking about wrestling training? Ric Flair has only ever trained one wrestler.
Oh, who is
You
it?
know who? Stan Lane.
No wonder Stan Lane retired. I mean, early. The first time I've ever seen Stan Lane, guess where he was? He was wearing a suit and he was doing commentary on Superstars.
Yeah, because he went into he actually did go into legitimate sports announcing, if I'm right. And he just
Oh,
sort of
interesting. Okay.
because I think that's why he took the job with the WWE just to get the experience.
Yeah. Okay. I don't really know much about Stan Lane. I only know him as a commentary.
His most famous stint is obviously the Midnight Express, when
Yeah.
Condrey left, and he also did the new version of the Fantastics in the '90s for Smoky Mountain when Bobby Eaton wouldn't get released by WCW because WCW were like, no, no, he's good. We want to keep him. And so he stayed employed till like 99, 2000, almost to the end of the company, despite the fact they did nothing with him after about
Wow.
after like the early 90s. Although interestingly, at one point he was the person who was pushed for gold to beat the Goldberg streak, which made no sense.
No, really?
Yeah, I
Seen
think
Stan
Goldberg,
Lane?
no, not Stanley, but Bobby Eaton,
Oh, Bobby Eaton. Still,
which
Bobby
made
Eaton? Why?
I don't know. I mean, Goldberg was like, I was for it at the time. It's a case of he obviously didn't get the industry at the time because at the time Bobby Eaton he didn't have the cachet he would have had like 5 years earlier, say. But yeah,
I'm gonna say what I said about the Undertaker streak, about the Goldberg streak, You really gotta give it to a guy that's over enough, but also young enough to brag about it for 10 years.
Brock Lesnar is still here 10 years later.
Well, not for long. Good
Uh,
luck ever seeing him again. But
oh,
you know what?
of
He's
course, yeah,
46. He's been back since 2012. Like, I'm okay never seeing him again.
yeah. No, I'd completely forgotten about the scandal. But now you said that, I completely remember why we're probably not seeing him again. Um,
Yeah.
let's get back to the show. So, we have a little segment in Vince's office where he meets John Cena for the first time. Then we have Reverend Devon and Batista beating Randy Orton, and his partner this week is the Big Valbolski, which is
Oh, nice.
it's a weird thing they're doing at the minute. Orton is facing these guys, and he's just having a different partner each week, and he's still
He
losing.
just has like a revolving door of partners. Why?
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
it, I don't know, but it's one of the. Whoa, do you remember Orton feuding with Batista in 2002? Which is weird to think
Yeah,
about.
vaguely.
Yeah.
When Orton was champion, I don't know. No, that was 2003. No,
Yeah.
I don't. No, I don't.
Yeah, over this summer, Orton faces Devon and Batista like most weeks on SmackDown with a different partner.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Because later on they became like partners.
Yeah. Next segment, you have Y2J's in Vince's office. He's complaining that they're looking at they're booking him against Edge at Vengeance, which, as we now know, didn't happen. Then John Cena enters, and something ruthless aggression. Cena slaps Jericho, and that leads to them having a match later.
Vengeance.
No, later tonight.
Oh,
Later
okay,
on the
okay,
show.
okay. They did have a match of Vengeance, though.
They do, yeah.
Sorry, getting ahead of myself.
So yeah, Angle is ready to face Undertaker, and he announces in an interview. And then we have a segment with Billy and Chuck where they're not taking their match tonight seriously, according to Rico, and he's just getting really angry with them. Then we get a segment saying The Rock's going to be back on SmackDown next week because it's The Rock's show. or whatever. For some reason, I thought this was the match that opened this show. I don't know why, but as it's the 4th of July, the real American Hulk Hogan wins the tag belts with his Canadian buddy Edge.
Silly. I remember that.
I think that's the only set of tag belts Hogan ever won.
Yeah, I believe it is.
Which
with Edge.
Yeah,
imagine for Edge though. That's a dream come true for him.
Yeah, Edge looked. I've not seen the clip in ages, but yeah, I think Edge was just sort of ecstatic. You know, him a lifelong Hulkamaniac, and you know, he's the only person who's ever held tag titles with Hogan. It's weird because obviously, if you look like old Memphis stuff, Hogan is always with Ed Leslie, but never gets a title out of it.
No, in fact, WrestleMania 9, they came very close to winning the tag team titles, but it didn't happen.
I'm sure he was compensated some way with that loss.
I mean, let's just say he walked out that building with the belt.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a building. It was a little structure they built in the parking lot. But anyways, so let's go back to SmackDown.
So yeah, the next match, Chris Jericho beats John Cena with the use of the ropes. Then we have a skip with Nydia and Jamie Noble at the trailer park. Then we have Tori and Stacy in a bra and panties match, which Tori wins, and she. I don't care.
The audience won that match.
I've got a bad woman segment to cover coming up shortly. I don't care about this one. And then in the main event, we have Kurt Angle taking on The Undertaker, and it ends in a draw after one of the refs is knocked down. Undertaker goes for the last ride. Angle applies the triangle choke as The Undertaker brings him down. The other ref is revived. One sees the tap out, one counts the fall. Vince was not happy with how this played out originally.
Oh, interesting.
Once the crowd left, he gets a load of team members, puts them along the barricade, and reshoots the ending. So there is actually, if you look, it's not hard to find. There is footage of side-by-side comparisons of what originally went down and what aired. I don't think it looks that different, but it is interesting.
Vince was notorious for making people go out in front of a live crowd and redoing it.
Yeah, like I said, this wasn't in front of a live crowd. They waited.
Yeah, this is even weirder that they actually made a makeshift audience. That's even weirder. It's weird. I never heard about that.
I only heard about it. I think that would be me doing another thing for the wrestling 20 years ago. That's the only reason I sort of stumbled across it. It's just one of those things I was just sort of looking at, going, "Oh, that's." Other than
I should go watch that SmackDown.
Yeah. But yeah, speaking of Vince sort of changing things up, the one that really comes to mind when they do that is the Savage Flair title match where Flair gets the title back. Because that's the one where they went out, came back, Vince was like horrible, and they just sent him straight out and did it again. And I think it was Scott Hall interview I heard where he said, yeah, what happened was, you know, he was supposed to take out Savage's leg, throw him in, and Flair was supposed to get the figure four straight on, and for whatever reason they went like 3 or 4 more minutes. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen the version of that match that was released on VHS, but I remember watching that thinking, well, yeah, Ramon interferes, but he doesn't. But it's so long between him interfering and the end of the match, it doesn't seem like it played that much into it. Whereas apparently there is an edited version out there where it's pretty much just Ramon takes out Savage's knee, throws him in, and Savage passes out to the figure four, which, yeah.
I remember that, yeah. I think that's how it went down, something like that, right?
Yeah, but for some reason the VHS release of it, there's a longer period and it just waters down the Ramon interference.
Imagine if you went to Broadway and you went to some play on Broadway, and then somebody like messed up a scene, but it wasn't even that noticeable because the audience didn't really know what was supposed to happen. And then they came back out and they're like, "We're gonna do this scene again, you guys, because we were just told that we suck."
Actually, I've had something similar happen to me. You know the play Wicked, the
Yes, absolutely. They're making a movie. They announced it
yeah.
at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so the first day that played in this country, technically it didn't debut for another week. It was like they basically it's a weird thing where it's basically like a tech rehearsal, but public can pay and come in, and so it was like the first time they'd ever done this in front of a paying audience.
Oh wow. So it's like almost like you can pay to see him practice.
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay, go on.
Um, so yeah, it's so in theory the actors and everyone know what they're doing. It's literally just to make sure the tech people have it right for when it officially debuts a week later. But yeah, so it starts out, the overture comes in, all the villagers come out, and it's like, look, it's Glinda the Good. And then the curtain drops because something's fucked up.
The-
And it was just like, what was that? But the whatever Glinda was supposed to be lowered on, it didn't go off right. So they just went, sort of reset or just start the whole thing again.
Nice.
So I mean, it's not quite just randomly in the middle of a show. It's you're
Yeah.
30 seconds in, they just go, no, let's just start again. But it is, but yeah, that's the closest to that I've got.
That's funny.
So that was SmackDown, which means we actually have a change on the Roll Call champions. 2002 at this point, the champions looked like this. So again, I only do the heavyweight and the tag titles purely because there would be a million of these I'd have to go through otherwise. So at this time in the WWE, The Undertaker was still the WWE champion. However, the WWE tag champions were Hogan and Edge. Um, that's a pairing I actually do quite like on paper. I'm glad it didn't last very long. What about you?
Same. I mean, it's fun, it's cute, but it was kind of silly.
Moving across here in the UK, we had a fair few promotions around this time. Arguably, the top would be All Star, who had Doug Williams as their top guy. You also had the FWA were breaking through at this point, and at the time it was Flash Bill Barker who was their champion. They also had a tag team title, which was held by the UK Pitbulls. I believe around this time the UK Pitbulls had pretty much any UK tag title of note, and the champion of NWA Hammerlock was current Performance Center trainer Johnny Moss. Moving over to the Orient in All Japan, Genichiro Tenryu was still the All Japan Triple Crown champion. I think I have said that a different way on every episode, and all of them sound right to me. I apologize if my poor pronunciation offends people. The All Japan Tag Team Champions was Keiji Muto and Taiyo Kei. In New Japan, their world champion was Fuji Nagata, and their tag team champions was Shoten, that's Hiroshi Tenzan and Masahiro Chono. And over in Mexico, the AAA World Championship, which was the Mexican National Championship, which is still around today, and it flits between the two major promotions. I don't follow Mexican wrestling enough to know why this happens, but at the time it was the AAA World Title. It was held by Hector Garza, and the AAA Tag Champions were Chessman and Electroshock. In CMLL, their world champion was Universo 2000, and CMLL tag titles were held by Los Guerreros de Inferno, Rey Bacanaro, and Ultimo Guerrero. So yeah, other than the one change, pretty much the same it has been since we started this show. So yeah, every week we do ask for your thoughts on the episode that we are doing, which is it's kind of hit or miss because obviously with issues with the cable companies, a lot of people not have not necessarily seen these early shows. I mean, I did have a
Yeah, I
couple
didn't
of
see it for a while.
yeah. So I mean, I've
I
had a
was trying
couple
to
of
remember. Sorry. Oh, sorry. I was trying to remember when I like started really getting into it, and I feel like one of the things I remember that time frame when I really started getting into the weekly shows was like Sports Entertainment Extreme.
yeah.
I remember that
I
very
believe
early on.
that's towards the end of this year. Yeah, that's
Okay, okay.
so it's not far. You're not. Yeah, it's not too far into it. Although the start of Sports Entertainment Extreme is we'll get there, but let's just say you sort of I remember I covered it for again the wrestling 20 years ago, and I watched the episode the first time that came up, and it's like, oh, that's how you're starting this, but we will get there. I think in the next 2 or 3 months.
It's funny because I'm thinking I was keeping up on WWE. Why was I so late to the party on TNA? Like 3 or 5 months later, whatever it was. It's
Yeah,
because like when I was like 20, 21 years old, I mean, ordering pay-per-view wasn't really that feasible for me every week or whatever. And then I remember I ended up getting a friend who was older and he had his own place and he's like, hey, I'm getting this every week. If you guys want to pitch in, you can come over too. And so then we just started pitching in and coming over his house every week and watching TNA.
yeah.
And then
That's
hang out, watch Adult Swim afterwards.
huh. Yeah, yeah. Not having cable. It wasn't until I spent some time in America about 10, 12 years ago, and I remember just like towards the end when you start running out of money, it was just a case of, oh, what do we do? So we just switched like TV and we just would watch just like about 3 hours of Adult Swim straight. It's great stuff on there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do throw these out every week. You can get in contact with us. Let us know your thoughts on the upcoming episode. ETA pod at proton.me or on any of our socials, ETA TNA pod, except Facebook, which is ETA TNA pod 1 because reasons. Um, we did have Chris Mazzone just sort of saying how he loved like the early TNA stuff. It was just so unreal, which I think is just another word for a little out there, I guess, because some of this stuff is crazy. And we did get a message from Snake on Twitter saying, "Oh, is this the episode where Theo the Midget wrestled the Duck Brother and got buck naked in the ring?" Which no, it isn't. But I'm kind of nervous for what we have coming up in the next couple of weeks. If that's something that actually happened and is not just a fever dream of yours, Snake. So
Yeah.
did you have any sort of thoughts coming into this event?
Not really. I mean, not much more than any other events. I was kind of looking forward to it, looking forward to the tag team title thing. I mean, going over the first few seconds of the show real quick, I was pretty excited because it almost seemed like a night of champions. All the
Yeah.
titles were on the line.
Yeah, no, we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah,
Yeah.
so when I sort of first got into TNA, I'd only sort of seen like the odd match, but I was kind of all aware. But I did kind of look back at what the history of what had happened, and yeah, the way they did this tag title, I was, I don't know, I was a little kind of, and I sort of looking a bit more into it for doing this. I'm thinking I was generous with that, but we'll get into that in a minute. Before we go on to the episode itself, we just want to state this does take a lot of time and effort to prepare, and while we do appreciate your feedback, what we really appreciate, in short, is some of your cash. We do have a Patreon, ETA TNA pod over on Patreon. I am hopefully going to have some of the rest of the levels put on in the next few days but right now we have the lowest tier, which is quite simple. After we do these shows, we do sort of 15-20 minutes or so where we kind of do like a more retrospective look at how some of the stuff has aged, as opposed to actually just what happened and how we felt about it at the time. So we kind of look back. I mean, like in the first one, we actually discussed the idea of, is pay-per-view itself dead in the traditional sense? How do we think about that? Well, you've got to cough up £4 a month for that one. When you think about it, that's 48 quid a year for 52 episodes of content. You are gaining from that. Also, we do cover a lot of other TNA related stuff on our next level up. We also do have early release, except for weeks like this when we're recording late. But yeah, usually we'll be early release date is the Monday, and not only do you get the full episode, you get the full episode plus the Patreon exclusive episode as one block. So you don't have to download them separately, put them in a playlist. No, they're all there ready for you 2 days early. So you get it Monday instead of Wednesday. And of course, we'll be going up the levels. We will be doing other TNA related stuff. We recently did the Chris Harris James Storm match from USA Wrestling Legends Fest, which is a freaking amazing match. It's a match that got on both sides of TNA, and we can see why. We do have other stuff coming up there. We have discussed doing the WWA pay-per-views. The last two definitely are on the docket, and if we can bring ourselves to, we'll watch the first three as well, just to give you the full collection of WWA pay-per-views. That will be on our next tier up, which I believe will be about £12 a month. So we will be bringing them some higher tiers later, and we will be providing much more high-quality content, because at the end of the day, we could do with the money to sort of help keep this afloat, but we know if we're not producing, you're not purchasing, and we want to produce the best possible content for you. So keep an eye on our Patreon, and that'll just help keep the show on the air. Done. Yeah, I believe it is time to start on with the show, and this is the show with the NWA Tag Team Title Tournament. The alliteration is great, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't actually look into the history of these titles before today. For our prelude show, you may remember we did the expansive look at the 5 years of the NWA title between last appearing on WWF TV and appearing here.
Mm-hmm.
The NWA tag titles, frankly, just weren't as interesting at the point. But sort of looking through their history this morning, it is slightly more interesting at the start. If for no other reason than they get introduced, the NWA tag team titles. Do you know when they were first introduced?
I'm gonna guess 1955.
Not even close.
1960, I don't know.
No, you are miles away.
All right, I'm just guessing.
1992.
92?
Yes.
But wasn't the NWA title been around since like 1908?
Well, the National Wrestling Alliance title has been around since 1948. Then you also had the National Wrestling Association title, which the two were unified by I keep
Right,
saying
so
it's Luthez, but yeah, so they had.
But even if we're going from 1948 to 1992 was a very long time.
But when you've got a heavyweight champion, it's one guy you have to book around. When you've got tag team, that's two guys, possibly with a manager if it's someone established with a manager, like say the Midnight Express.
Yeah.
So yeah, the NWA were just like, no, we'll just keep the regional titles. So yeah,
That
until like
makes sense,
19,
I guess, because each region had their own tag titles, so they didn't need the official world tag team titles. That makes sense.
yeah. So yeah, so yeah, there was multiple NWA tag titles until I think it was about 1985 when it basically Jim Crockett was the NWA. But of course, those titles would become the WCW titles. So yeah, the NWA didn't introduce World Tag Team titles till 1992, which so it saw out the last year or so of its relationship with WCW, and were then promptly abandoned for 2 years. I mean, when you consider what happened in that gap to the NWA title, I can understand after being shunned by ECW why they're a bit reluctant to bring the tag titles back out if in case the same thing happened to them. But yeah, so I believe it was a USWA event where they were brought back and the Rock and Roll became won their first NWA tag titles, which again is weird to think that it was the Rock and Roll who were closely associated with the NWA tag titles didn't win the current version of those belts until 1995, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really the most interesting part of the history.
Yeah.
Um, basically, it seems every reign after after the team win it, for some reason, something happens and the titles get vacated up until they're brought back by the WWF after having been vacated for nearly 6 months. At which point, that's the first time there's any sort of straight continuity with these belts since its time on WCW 5 years earlier. And then, yeah, and that lasts until they're vacated in June of 2002 for this title tournament.
Wow.
Um, it may seem like I'm sort of skipping over it, but I sort of look at some of the names on this list and they're not names a lot of people would have heard of. Other than, yeah, really the only name that jumps out is the Rock and Roll Express, who won it a few times over the span of 10 years. And of course, you've got New Midnight Express, who won it in the WWF. But again, yeah.
Wait, you mean Bob Holly and Bart Gunn?
Yeah, so yeah,
Okay.
they actually did. They are not one of the teams to vacate the titles. They actually did lose it to a live event to a team called the Border Patrol, which is Agent Gunn and Agent Max. And I could look into them, but I don't think there's a lot about them out there. But yeah. And from there, yeah, there's pretty much just a straight lineage down to when it's vacated a couple of weeks before the show we're about to talk about today. Although it's interesting, the tag titles actually changed hands after the NWA title had been vacated, which I don't know. I mean, it could just be a sign that the people who say that Severin they did want to bring Severin into TNA. It's a case of, well, look, obviously they weren't planning on vacating the title because they didn't vacate the tag titles at the same time. But the fact they did end up vacating the tag titles, it could just be a case of, oh yeah, they just didn't get around to it at the same time they stripped Severin. But there are so many conflicting stories with regards to how the NWA title was treated going into the TNA era. It's sort of hard to really sort of put one over the other because even Jeff's point of view on his podcast is different from his dad's point of view in the book. So it's hard to sort of get a grasp on where they really stood with these titles.
Yeah, it really is.
Let's start talking about the show. So we kick things off with the announcers at ringside. Tenay obviously is the way Tenay always looks. Don West, I don't know how to describe what he's wearing other than it looks like he's wearing a caricature of a tuxedo. It's literally like he ripped the thing out of a cartoon. And Ed Ferrara looks like a midlife crisis has gained sentience. Not that he looks like he's going through one. He looks like he is one that's just gained human form. I don't know how else to describe his look today. But yeah, as we've alluded to already, all titles are on the line tonight.
Night of Champions, and also they're live in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes. Yeah, for some reason, Wikipedia listed this as the Von Braun Center in Huntsville, Alabama. But no, this is the Memorial Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee. So we're still a couple of weeks away from the actual asylum itself, regardless of what a couple of people have put down. They're still at the bigger venue here. How was it? Well, Jarrett's in Jefft Jarrett's book, he was happy with it. Are we going to be happy with it? Well, we'll discuss that at the end.
We'll find out after these messages. We'll be right back.
So, yeah, to start things off, the current NWA president, Jim Miller, is introduced. He presents the announce team with a trophy to welcome them to the NWA. It's a wrestling show. It's a trophy. I'm going to call it Chekhov's trophy.
Yeah, the trophy didn't really represent anything, right? It was like a homewarming gift.
Yeah. It's one of those things of that. I mean, a black would maybe have suited better. With a trophy, it's just a case of, okay, who's that going to get smashed over? But we'll
Hey, no spoilers.
Well, I'm not saying it does get smashed over someone, but it's creating that expectation.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So apparently Miller missed the first shows because he was in Japan on a promotional tour. This sounds
he actually
good.
said the first show, which makes me think he thought this was the second show.
Technically, this was the second show.
Right, it was.
It just was the third pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, this sounds good that he's out there, making deals in Japan. But because Japan was showing a lot of their stuff on TV at the time. But I'm going to be honest, the wrestling media in Japan in 2002 did not hold the NWA in a great deal of reverence. At least not to the degree it once did. And it's, I mean, it obviously there are still standards out there, but getting wrestling stuff on TV in Japan, some of the footage that I filmed has been shown on Samurai TV out there, like 10 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think something cool was seeing some of my footage used in, remember the TV show Gotham?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a scene in that where like a security guard's watching wrestling on TV, and that's a show oh no, I wasn't cameras for that show. I was just backstage, but that was kind of cool. Just being like, oh yeah, that's something I did. I was involved in that.
Nice.
So yeah, Jim Miller announces that next week Amori will be facing whoever the NWA champion is at the end of tonight. Is that a name you know? Because it's not.
No, I don't remember that name. I don't think I've ever heard of him.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was just me.
It's like they think he was gonna be a big star because he wasn't.
Yeah, well, they said he's a big dude, 6'4", 230 odd pounds or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. He has big.
Well, I mean, that often helps in wrestling. There are times we've seen time and time again where it's not, but if you're bringing a guy in, and it's like when Danny Burch was first signed by WWE, I remember chatting with him in the weeks afterwards, and he said, yeah, no, one guy just turned up at the tryouts. He was over 7 foot tall, said, I've never been in the ring before. He took one look at him and go, oh, we'll give him a shot. In this case of what, a guy who's never been in the ring before, it's like, yeah, he's 7 foot tall. Of course they're going to say, oh, we'll have a look. Which is crazy, but that's just the way the wrestling business works.
Yeah, that's true.
So, first match we get is so it's James Storm and Chris Harris out first. They're not using the AMW name yet, but that will come in time. And then next now is the Johnsons. Plumtree cuts quite a nice promo here, and he announces them as the tag team champions, which, I mean, a couple of weeks earlier he would have been right, because the people under the mask, the Shane twins, actually were the NWA tag team champions up until just over a week ago. So,
Oh, they were the ones that were stripped. Okay, wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
we will be. This is a subject I want to touch on when we hit the Patreon up at the end of the episode, because I feel there's something we can talk about here. This is going to be one of the subjects I bring up, the Shane twins.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the TNA had such high respect for the NWA tag team champions. They dressed them up like penises on their first shows. It was a we discussed it on the first episode, but yeah, it was a choice. Apparently you miss all the swings you don't take. This one was never going to hit anything, nearly guaranteed, but they did it anyway. So one of the twins starts with Harris, and a suplex gets two. Harris ducks some clotheslines, hits an arm drag. He then follows up with a Fez press, and Storm is in, showing a House of Fire. A neck breaker turns things around, though. Both Johnsons are in double team powerbomb. It gives me concern because that didn't look like the best landing of that powerbomb. Suplex reversal goes nowhere for Storm. They start with a double team. Storm nearly over rotates on quite an awful looking flapjack attempt. Seriously, guys, you don't let go of the guy. You just up, down, just flat back down. Come on, guys. Attempt of a second rope splash is met with boots to the face, and a super kick allows for the double tag. Harris is cut off quickly, but nails a spear. A crossbody attempt didn't take the Johnsons down, but a dropkick assist picks up the victory for Storm and Harris. Afterwards, Mortimer Plumtree is in the ring and he berates the twins, but they go to chokeslam him, but don't, and instead just push him to the ground because that'll show him.
Yeah, that was.
So the Johnsons and Storm and Harris. What do we make of the match?
Well, my first question is, during commentary, they said that the Harris and Storm were not prepared for the Johnsons. They were prepared for the Dupps. Do you know what happened there?
I somehow missed that. No, I don't know what happened there. My instant thought would be, like, in kayfabe terms, that the Dupps ducking out of the match last week, TNA management were just like, no.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Like, as a punishment, take him out of the tournament.
Yeah. I mean, the way they pushed the Johnsons on the first event makes me think that, they were always planning on having them in this tournament. So I don't know.
Yeah. It was good. It was a pretty good match. We got to see Storm and Harris team up. I think again for the second time. But this time they were wearing their wrestling tights and they weren't told to take their shirts off.
That's true. Chris Harris obviously picked up where Psychosis failed for James Storm here.
Yeah. I guess you could put it that way.
Yeah, so I think this is the last we actually see of the Johnsons, and can't say I'm too disappointed about that. So you've got a set of huge identical twins. One of their biggest selling points is they look the same and you cover their faces up. That just doesn't seem like a great.
Oh, also commentary mentioned that they're identical twins, which is funny because they're in masks.
Yeah, it's a strange strategy that they were trying to promote them with, because with all identical twins, one of the things they can do is the twin magic. And you sort of dress them up exactly the same with masks on. It's a case of, well, that could be any sort of large guy. It doesn't have to be the twin. It kind of defeats the object of signing twins.
It does completely.
So we got the first cage dancing segment of the night, and Tenay lists off some of the upcoming NWA events. We get the Chiron along the bottom, and I know this is about 3 or 4 sort of times this happens, but they actually link all the events that are happening on the same day on the same Chiron. So it starts off, first one is for the 4th, and the next one's for the 5th, then it's for the 6th, and so on. So Hall is out to do an interview now. Noticed that, so the first time we saw him on episode 1, he was wearing a t-shirt from a strip club. This week he's wearing a t-shirt from an elementary school, which is a bit of a change.
I had that written down because so I was watching this thing and I was thinking Scott Hall was like the coolest dude in wrestling at one point. And it's like, in order to be cool, like one of the things you have to do is like the way you dress makes a statement. And it really felt like he just opened his drawer and found any t-shirt that he had in the drawer. And he was not dressed cool. He just looked like an old dad that was on like vacation in Florida.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah. Yeah, so he gets out a hey yo, and out comes Jefft Jarrett.
Yeah, he just got 3 seconds of mic time.
Yeah. Apparently no one wants to see Scott Hall, according to Jarrett. So Hall challenges Jarrett to bring it right now, to which Jarrett actually obliges. He walks down to the ring only to be cut off by Jim Miller. And Jarrett backs down from Jim Miller, which is...
We're not going to do it right now, Jeff. We're going to do it later. We're going to do it later. And he's like, I'm going to kick his ass. And Jim Miller says, Jeff, I'll tell you when you're going to kick his ass. And it's later.
Yeah. So while that's happening, Krush jumps Scott Hall from behind. Now, nothing against Miller here, but I can see how he may have accidentally let Steve Corino take the belt that he didn't hold to the UK and lose it in an unadvertised match if, he's got that level of peripheral awareness of a wrestling ring.
Right. I mean, he has his back to the ring and he can't tell there's a fight happening.
Yeah. But yes, if you're not sure what we're talking about with the Carino reference, check out the second half of our prelude episode. We go into it in a bit more detail. So yeah, Scott Hall gets the better of Krush, who slips out of the edge only to take a fall-away slam and be dumped out of the ring. It's odd to... So I know this is all being done for pay-per-view, which is why this segment is odd to me. What do you say?
I don't know. I mean, they're trying to build up hype to the end. You're right though, because like Raw, you need a strong segment to tie into the end because people can change the channel. But like on pay-per-view, it's like I paid for this. I'm gonna watch it. You know? It was okay. It was a little bit too like a little too over the top sports entertainment-y for me. But they got the point across, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to sort of see Scott Hall. Like you said, I'm not as down on the way he was dressed as you were. 'Cause I still look at him and it's like it's still the same guy. He's still going to be pretty awesome whatever he does out there. I did feel bad for Krush though because he's a good guy. I mean, I know he had the short stint in the WWF like the year before, but you're putting him in there against Hall and the way Hall kind of handles guys in gimmick, it does, unless they sort of do get one up on him, it does kind of make him look a bit worse. And so I felt bad for Krush here because, he comes across as fodder here. And I'm going to be honest, it doesn't get much better throughout the episode, which is a shame because you look at him standing there, he does look like a star.
Yeah, absolutely.
we have cage dancing and more NWA dates. Not trying to cast stereotypes here, but is the cage dancing really the best time to draw wrestling fans' attention to reading something? That's kind of harsh, but
I mean, is there ever
completely
a good
fair.
time for that though?
Hmm. But it's like, look, pretty lady. Oh yeah, here are some more. Here's some more wrestling, but we're telling you at the
He's
same
also
time,
a
pretty
book.
ladies on the screen. So, Goldilocks is in the back where Storm and Harris have been attacked. Bill Behrens has everything under control, though. I'm guessing because they're not wearing shirts at the minute, eh?
Yeah. And in my notes, I wrote James Storm equals Wolfpack Sting.
Yeah, I found it odd. Yeah, Storm's obviously rocking the full face mask there, whereas Harris, it was just his arm. Um,
Yeah,
it,
at first when I first saw it, I thought only James Storm got attacked, and they
yeah,
mentioned that they were both attacked, and I actually went back to look at it, and it really doesn't look like Chris Hurst got attacked.
yeah, I don't know. Will they try to go, oh, we'll kind of two crimson masks at once? That's just going to look odd. And it's like, no, it's just, yeah, hack the
Yeah, that's
arm. And
probably you're probably right. That was probably their thinking.
yeah. So, next match, and we have Anthony Ingram getting the jobber entrance while Monty Brown is introduced, and he looks absolutely cut to ribbons here as he comes out to a theme that will be later used by one of his future rivals. He grabs the mic and calls out to those here in Tennessee. This is the point I realized that Wikipedia had the wrong venue because I checked every other site I checked for this states, yeah, it was a municipal auditorium. So I don't know why Wikipedia says this took place in Huntsville.
Wow. You mean
Uh,
Wikipedia was wrong?
I know. An encyclopedia you can edit yourself that is strangely wrong about. Have you seen some of the stuff that's happened to like rest like well just people's uh Wikipedia pages in the past? I remember one of my favorite artists, a guy called Frank Turner, and when he first broke out on his own like about 15 years ago, he because he was in a band called Million Dead, he had his own Wikipedia page, and him and his mates just to play around were like, oh yeah, once Million Dead broke up, Frank Turner started singing for Saxon. I actually brought it up on like a YouTube live stream during the pandemic, and he said, "Yeah, no, that was just us because we were bored, just
Yeah.
having fun with our Wikipedia page." Um, I remember once I was reading like the Jake the Snake Wikipedia page, and you sort of go down, and there's like a section about some of the more controversial acts he was part of while he was here in the UK, including an incident with Page's family in a town actually not far from me here in Essex, a place called Canvey Island. There was an incident in the ring there where he challenged the entire family to a fight. Um, and then underneath that, it was like, and 2 years before that happened, Jake the Snake died. It was like, I'm sorry. I think you've got your timeline a bit mixed up there.
Oh yeah. I mean, a bit fictional too.
But yeah, but there are some brilliant sort of edits people have made on Wikipedia. It's always interesting when you go onto a page and it just comes up locked. It's a case of, oh, someone had a bit too much fun with this one, did they? So yeah, Brown states that he wants to be the next NWA champion, and he's going to show the world how he expects to get it in the match today. So I once read an article on a website somewhere years ago where the person writing it said, "Oh, when I was a kid, I used to think all the WWF jobbers were just guys that were randomly picked out the crowd and stuffed into a pair of tights."
You know
And
what's funny is me too. When I was a kid, I referred to them as volunteers.
I can looking at some of the guys they had on those shows, I can completely understand that logic. Um, Especially the ones who've got zero offense, and it's like, yeah, no, that totally makes sense. But that's exactly what this guy Ingram looks like here. He's
I can see it more so in TNA than in WWE. The
yeah.
volunteers.
Um, yeah, I mean, all I can say is he's. I'm not knocking the kid's physique. I'm just saying I hope he has some good personality. So we start off with a nice looking punch combo by Monty Brown. It's a shame his clubbing forearms don't look anywhere near as good. Ingram literally walks out of a corner into a T-bone suplex. He reverses a whip but gets caught by a corner charge where Brown power slams him. And the impact of the power slam actually brings Brown to his feet. Really cool looking there. Can't just deny this guy's got just pure athleticism. So Brown
Yeah.
scoops his kid up into a crossbody and turns that into a power bomb in what he calls the Alpha Bomb. Yeah, just a short sub 2 minute squash here. Brown looks really cool and dominant. Great athlete. What did you think?
He called out Ken Shamrock in the beginning of the match before the match started, and I feel like he was showing charisma, but he definitely didn't have his cadence down yet. I feel like it was a little bit too much to be calling out Ken Shamrock at this point in his career. But he was good. He was impressive. I liked him.
Yeah,
Let's see, what did I write down? Oh, he was very different. So they said that Monty Brown has been working for a couple of years on the Michigan independent wrestling scene, which I thought
yeah,
was interesting. But yeah, he was good. He was impressive. I enjoyed him.
yeah. I mean, you said about sort of his cadence and stuff. I kind of found when he was at his peak, like sort of 2005, I found some of his cadences a bit much at times. I can get
Like
why
over the
people,
top. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's wrestling, so a lot of people are over the top, but it wasn't for me then. Here he's still working on stuff. So I kind of because he disappears for a while and then comes back.
Yeah, he did.
Kind of wish I'd seen what he was doing sort of in the middle there because I think that's probably out of that this sort of era, that's probably when I would have preferred him. Um, but yeah,
Well, you better go find some Michigan independent wrestling tape traders.
Researching this stuff, I found all sorts of weird sort of channels like that. I mean, I showed you the one we did for the Patreon the other day. You sort of looked at some of the videos on that. I was just like, it blew your mind. Some of the rarities the guy had on there, didn't he?
Yeah, sometimes you'll come across those pages. Absolutely.
Another cage dance segment because they didn't seem as egregious here. There's one that sort of seems drawn out like later, but as like the last couple of shows, they just seemed to be a lot more. Whereas this one, it's just a case of boom onto the next. I don't know if it's just they got the flow down better, or I've just kind of become numb to it.
Well, I did notate that this show felt a lot more real than the last show because the last show felt very clipped together, and this one felt a lot more solid because it was live.
Yeah, I remember. So in Jarrett's book, he says the first taping finished like 11:30, which I think they say it on the last show, which means if they started at 8, then they wouldn't have had 2 full hours. So yeah, because you said there was a lot of replays on the last show, and I feel part of that was just padding for time. So yeah,
Yeah, bulking it up a little bit.
So I feel this show, yeah, although there are replays, it doesn't feel as sort of over the top as it did last week because they actually, because they've got to do this all in 1:58.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
exactly. Their TV window.
Yeah. Next segment, TNA throws to Goldilocks, who is supposed to be backstage with Miller, except when the camera gets them, she can't find him, which is weird because he was like at ringside 5 minutes ago, but apparently he's disappeared in that time. Walking through the back is the Hot Shots. They had a dark match earlier, so they actually do get a small reaction from the crowd. But this is the first time they've been seen on TV, and they're not even really referenced, so no one knows who the hell they are. And I should mention, no idea who the dark match was against. There's only one site that actually lists they had a match, and they just put unknown wrestler and unknown wrestler face the hot shots. So yeah,
It could be anybody. It was
it
Will
could be,
Ospreay and Okada.
it could have been.
No, Will Ospreay wasn't even born yet. I'm just
He's
kidding. I'm
not.
exaggerating. But he wasn't I mean, he was too young. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Although some of these wrestling sites, the archiving is so bad. When I did an interview with Gary Steele, I joked that on a couple of wrestling sites, his debut is listed as a 1994 WWF house show because there was a jobber with the same name as him. And they were just like, "Oh, it must be the same guy." It's like, but he was in Ashfield, in Kent, not I can't remember where the house show was, but it's just I sort of mentioned to him, it's like, no, I think I would remember that if I'd done a TV taping for Vince. I was like, oh, yeah, you'd think, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what those chair shots, man.
Yeah. Next, we have Puppet the Psycho Dwarf runs on screen and he has something to say. He lists off all the famous midgets he'd happily beat up.
Oh my gosh, that was so bad. And you can't say midget. I mean, I'm not saying it to you, I'm saying it to him because he
Yeah.
says midget so many times.
The thing that jumps out at me is the ones he lists off, there's only one that's still alive. So I'm just
Oh wow.
I'm quite thankful he didn't list off Warwick Davis because that guy's a treasure and we need to keep him. Yeah, the Leprechaun films are bad, but we all down deep know we love Wicket the Ewok.
Oh yeah.
So Puppet wants to see a midget lead, and that's a promise, which it's not. It's a statement. There's a difference. I don't mean to be pedantic about this, but I damn well will be. The quality of this promo, I feel I should right here make an apology for everything bad I've ever said about his IPW hardcore commentary, because that sounds like Gordon Soley compared to some of the stuff he's coming out with here. So the Rainbow Express are out for their match. There is no Gertner promo here, given how last week's sort of unraveled the further along he went with it.
Oh my
I'll accept
gosh, it was so bad.
It
And like
was.
if I didn't know Joel Gertner from ECW, I would think this guy is the worst thing ever in wrestling. And like he kissed that woman, like is this total nonstop assault?
Yeah, no, we'll get to that shortly. Yeah,
Oh, that
that's
wasn't now. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
no, that's later in the show. But no, this is the first match. I'm not offended that he doesn't promo here, given like we said the last week one. It's not, I thought it started off fine last week, but yeah, towards the end it's just like, no, we don't need this. Goldilocks is in the back with their opponents. Apparently Buff Bagwell is a surprise entrant in a tournament where the matches weren't announced ahead of time. We have a surprise entrance. Just gonna repeat that again. In a tournament where we didn't know the matches ahead of time, we have a surprise entrance.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as I stated in the news segment at the start of the show, Jerry Jarrett wasn't feeling this interview. And when he brought it up to other people, they just said that's probably the best that they were going to get from Buff Bagwell.
Oh man,
He was not good here. I'm
no.
sure I have seen better interviews from him in WCW, but then again, he said he's recently said that, this was sort of where he started going really downhill with his addiction. So that's going to play havoc with this sort of stuff. So Buff says he's the number one guy in the business.
Yeah, but is he really?
I think the only time he's been number one in anything is he was the first guy from WCW to get fired by the WWF.
And
That
then on
list,
top of that, like what did she say? What did he get offended about? I wrote this down. I wrote something down here. Buff got offended. What did he get offended? I write it down. I guess not. He got offended during her speech. Oh, you know what? I haven't. This is my list here. He was offended because she said he was a surprise. I don't understand that.
Okay, so I'm going to be honest here. We discussed this off air. There was an issue with my notes. A load of them got deleted. I had to go back and sort of rewrite them. Apparently, I've missed out this match, so I don't have a play-by-play for this match. Unless you've got any in your notes, anything.
No, I don't. I
No,
just have my notes about what happened after the match.
no, that's fine. So off the top, uh, off the top of my head, I'm going to have to do the match from memory, which is essentially uh, Buffs in first. They do typical Rainbow Express stuff, and then Alicia comes out and she gets money off Ed Ferrara. While that was happening, something happened in the ring, but of course, in a promotion named Total Nonstop Action, we don't need to see the action. We just need to see the TNA.
Yeah, basically.
So
It's
back
like
in
the
the
Ryan
ring.
Shamrock thing. I mean, I'm sorry, the Alicia thing is so weird.
Yeah, it's gone on for longer than I was expecting it to. So I'm sort of now thinking maybe I should look into where it's going. But I think part of this experience is I'm catching up on stuff that I've either forgotten or didn't know
Yeah,
happened. So
same.
so there is still that intrigue for me. So I'm not.
I
So
mean,
it's like, oh, I don't
we'll
want
let
to
it play
spoil it for
out.
myself.
We'll let it
Yeah.
play out. Who knows? The end game might be Cody Rhodes goes to WrestleMania. We'll see.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was going to say like that would happen again, but it looks like that's the way they're going now, doesn't it? Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, once Alicia sort of walks to the back, Apollo is on offense until they start laying the heat on him because a Puerto Rican Superman can't take on the Rainbow Express because they are. I'm going to say it now. I know we've only seen him in a battle royal, a singles match, and a tag match. But the singles match and the tag match is not getting booked that strongly, especially when they pushed him quite hard in the battle royal. Um, a
I
lot
thought
of
he
guys
shined in this match. I thought he did really
when
well.
he was on offense, he did. But
When he was, yeah,
I
exactly.
feel he in his matches he's been selling way too much considering what he looks like. I mean, I don't. I mean, there is a way of getting a guy over like that without smashing him over, but the way they're doing it is not it. So yeah, they start getting the heat on Apollo, and he gets the tag to Buff, and eventually, yeah, where I've not got the notes in front of me, I can't remember the finish exactly, but uh, yeah, Gertner gets involved, and Buff takes the loss, which leads to the promo at the end where Ferrara goes over to him, and Buff is like, "No, don't call me Buff. I'm not Buff anymore. Look, just lost to two gay guys, which I don't know how that stops him being Buff, but whatever. I'm
I know he's lost to two gay guys. That's so weird that that would be like a thing.
yeah.
Lost to two gay guys.
So yeah, he's now just Marcus Bagwell, and he's going home, which, as we discussed in the news, is actually what's happening because yeah, that didn't work for him, brother. So yeah, what were your thoughts on this whole thing?
I mean, not much. It was cool to see Buff. He's done around for the long haul. I remember this happening. I do remember this little promo and I remember like something about him not wanting the top hat or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah. It reminds me of a famous storyline that I make fun of in wrestling, where people say, you know, I'm a person too. I have a real name. My real name is Tom Brandy. You know,
Yeah, I mean Buff as a top guy, he talks about when he broke his neck in WCW and people didn't care. It wasn't that people didn't care when he broke his neck in WCW. It's that WCW booked his return so horribly, the fans just lost all interest, if I remember right.
yeah, I think so too.
Um, yeah, just him being revealed as another member of the NWO at a point where pretty much everyone was joining the NWO. It wasn't special or shocking. It was I mean, it wasn't quite expected, but when it happened, it wasn't a shock either. And I think that is really where his mainstream career just fell off a cliff, really.
I can see that.
So next up, we have Shamrock is out for an interview. Apparently, the crowd doesn't respond to anyone like they do to him. I mean, that's a bold statement to make when we've already seen Scott Hall in the ring. So yeah, at least he's wearing sensible footwear this time. We both picked up on the flip-flops he was wearing last week, and this week he's actually wearing trainers, good, sensible warm-up gear. So yeah, Shamrock questions why Monty Brown should have a title match after one NWA match, despite the fact he won the title in his first NWA match. I mean, he's like, oh yeah, I beat 19 other guys. It's like, you're not entry number 19 in a 20-man battle royal. It's not the argument you think it is that you have here.
It's not. It's true. You're right.
And he also states that Monty may have a short career in the NWA, which is an interesting comment in hindsight, I think. At this point, the crowd start with the what chants, but he does actually work through it quite well. I mean, this promo is not fantastic, but I think the what chants it's one of the few times I've made a promo better because I don't know how much of the WWE stuff he was watching at the time, but he gets the cadence of how to work with the crowd in that situation. So yeah, he says he's after he's done with Malice, Anari, and maybe Monty Brown can be in consideration, once he's gone through those two. And then the lights go out. Then somewhere in the arena, the spotlight comes on. It's Jim Mitchell, and Shamrock should be concerned with Malice tonight and no one else. And then another spotlight finds Shamrock is on the floor, and there's Malice standing over him. Out come all the EMTs, and they're bracing up Shamrock's neck. We don't know why. We didn't even hear a smack as he hit the floor. We just know that something's happened to his neck. But we didn't see it because the lights weren't on. I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We didn't see what happened.
I don't know. I feel like it's a bad thing overall, but it may have been a good thing to hide Ken Shamrock's weaknesses.
I was probably going to go into this in the match, but I'll say it here. Is Shamrock really the sort of person you want to try and get sympathy heat with?
No.
Surely part of the appeal with Shamrock is that he's just a killer. Having him play like an underdog. I know he's supposed to be the babyface in this situation, but it's the same with Goldberg, especially during his WCW run. Why would you make him, or why would you stick a blonde wig on his head? But why would you make like Goldberg look weak when you can have him be a killer, and then so you build up someone strong for him to go against? And it's a case of just these two immovable objects. Maybe I'm thinking about that wrong, but I mean, the WWF tried doing this with Shamrock as well, where they'd have him just be the underdog, and it's like, just let him go out there and tear people apart, surely. Yeah. Next, we have Goldilocks backstage with Bill Behrens. He's on the phone and he's freaking out. Miller's disappeared.
Oh wait, you skipped a thing. You skipped something before Buff did his promo. Maybe you didn't skip it. Maybe I missed it. But they were not able to find NWA President Jim Miller in the back.
No, I did mention that. That was in the
Okay.
That was before we had.
I just missed it.
That was before we met the Hot Shots and Puppet came in, and that was in that mess.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So Goldilocks is backstage with Bill Behrens. He's on the phone and he's freaking out because Miller's disappeared and they're down a tag team, and there's Jerry Lynn and he's offering to fill in the vacant spot in the tag team final. But Behrens just sends everyone away just so he can have a moment on the phone. And we come back.
Yeah, I
to
feel
the
like
ring.
Jerry Lynn was being very pushy.
Yeah. I find it odd, especially in WWF it makes more sense, but with like smaller promotions, the fact the amount of people they just have backstage and they walking around in their gear, especially if you don't know they do like dark matches and stuff like having like when the hot shots walk through earlier in their gear, it's like that doesn't make any sense to anyone who doesn't who's who's not really who's not sort of au fait with like the wrestling world. I mean, okay, it's a wrestling pay-per-view, so only wrestling fans are watching this. But if someone was to see this broadcast on TV, it'd be like, well, what's he? Why is he in his gear if he's not booked already? It's a weird thing that we as fans just accept. Where I think normal people would just look at and go, that's a bit odd, isn't it? Because he's never explained. And it could.
I
It's
don't
one of those
know.
things.
I feel like it's the mentality of always being ready.
True. I mean, there's a perfectly logical explanation you could give. You could just be like, they don't know how long the wrestling matches are going to go, so they always have one or two on standby. And it's the sort of thing the UFC do. And you sort of say that, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense. It's not a conversation you need to have with someone. You just say, standby match, and they're like, ah, right, okay, well, that makes sense. So, back to the ring. For some reason, the audio kicks in about halfway through JB's introduction here, so we missed the start of it. But Puppet is out with a kendo stick. There's a trash can in the ring, so I guess it's a hardcore match. Maybe if they brought the sound in on time when JB started his announcement, we'd know that. But
Well, he did earlier state his intentions were to make a midget bleed, quote unquote.
this is true. This is true.
So
Yeah, like again, he says he wants to beat up a midget. And out comes Todd Stone, who gets caned as soon as he slides into the ring. Trash can shot to Stone, clothesline knocks him down again. He takes a slam that almost misses the trash can somehow. Puppet puts the can on Stone's head and works over him with the kendo stick and a TKO onto the edge of the trash can. And Stone is looking face up at the lights, and Puppet gets the win. He then canes the ref, who tries to raise his hand, and basically swings after anything that moves, including Don West, JB, and I think the ring announcer as well. But he still didn't make the midget bleed. Any thoughts on this?
no, not really. Just ouch.
Yeah.
Oh, at the end of the match, Ed Ferrara wanted to give him a high five or something, and he kind of attacked Ed a little bit.
Yeah.
That's fun. I like that. That was good. And like, he's like, Ed, why would you even want to like interact with him? He goes, I love him. Stupid.
Yeah. Weirdly, they don't do the midget matches much more yet. I've clicked on Todd Stone's cage match profile. None of his matches on cage match did he ever win, but we actually have one of his matches coming up in what will be season. If we make it to season 2, he faces Kevin Nash, and if I can find the footage, we'll also have a Patreon match of his where he loses a casket match.
Wow.
So that's something to look forward to. This guy looked in good shape, but was booked to do like nothing in this match, so it's hard to give any sort of opinion on him. And the Puppet stuff, I don't know. We keep talking about Puppet. He is. I'm not feeling this gimmick at all. And you mentioned, I think, on the first episode where this goes, and it's not pleasant. So hopefully, once that's out the way, we can just move on. So yeah, after another quick cage dance and some more dates, we're in the back, and Goldie is with the EMTs. They're doing an assessment of Shamrock, and they're unsure whether he's actually going to be able to make it for the match or not. Then we get a replay of the stuff with Francine and Ferrara from last week, because we really needed to see that again. Although last week I didn't realize where Alexis Laurie was eliminated, but if you actually watch this replay, she actually does walk past the camera about halfway through. So apparently, I just wasn't paying enough attention. Apparently, I was too focused on Francine taking off Ferrara's belt. So, more fool me for. So Francine is out first. Taylor is out next, and this is for the Miss TNA crown. I just want to throw this out there right now. Around this point, the NWA had revived their women's title. Just throwing that out there. Gonna leave that right there. So they've got this Beauty Queen title. Well, there's an actual wrestling title that they could have had in its place. Not that either of these would have been credible contenders, but still. Although actually, I just want to say right here, Francine is actually dressed like an athlete for this match. Taylor, on the other hand, I mean, she looks incredible, but what she's wearing doesn't scream, I'm about to participate in a combat sport.
No, not at all.
No. So before the match, Francine pulls a belt out of her boot and starts whipping away on Taylor. As the
Is that where
referee,
it came from? Okay.
yeah,
I didn't know where it came from. I thought maybe she pulled it from the referee. I didn't notice it.
yeah, no, she'd snuck it in. And so, as the referee's sort of separating the two, Taylor grabs the belt and returns the favor. And I put this in quotation marks for some reason, but unfortunately, she catches the ref with the belt, and the match is thrown out before it can start.
Oh my
Such a
gosh, that
shame.
was so funny that she hit the referee with the belt.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Ferrara gets into the ring again, and something boob grab, and Ferrara gets whipped with the belt. Why do we have to see this again? Actually, no, there is a point to this. If you actually watch the footage back, Francine puts his hand there, but he's the one who actually starts the squeezing. So it's like a lesson in life. Fellas, sometimes a girl starts off interested but loses interest. It's frustrating when it happens, but their body, their choice. You just have to accept it. Otherwise, you are the bad person in that situation. No doubt about it. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Unless you have any thoughts, I'm happy to move on from this.
I mean, she obviously put his hand on her boob area, but no, not really.
So as Francine sort of storms off, JB comes out to bring out Hermie Sadler.
Oh my gosh. We go from bad to worse.
Yeah, so Hermie's happy to be here and says nothing in a long amount of time before he's interrupted by K Krush. Krush says the people don't want to hear from him. Don't know about the arena, but here at home, I agree with that statement. And basically says, look, yeah, if you got an issue with B-Boy, just bring it. So which Hermie sort of charges him, and security and Hermie's pit crew sort of pull him apart. I don't want to say this right now. They didn't give Herbie enough time to embarrass himself by throwing fake-looking punches. They actually did the pull apart really well, really quickly. It's a lot better than a lot of pull aparts I've seen on more recent programming. So kudos to the people involved. You know. So Crush says he doesn't have time for this tonight, but if Herbie wants to go, he's free next week, and so Herbie Sadler accepts. Just gonna say this right now. That's the second time that Crush has been punked by someone. I just really hope it's not a sign that he's losing the tag match tonight. What do you say?
Uh, we'll see what comes. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Are you looking forward to this for next week?
Yeah, I am.
I mean, like I
I
said,
mean, not yes and no, I mean, kind of like Kate Quick is doing really good work, but like who wants to see a NASCAR driver?
Mm. Like I said, the pull apart itself was well produced. So if they
I feel
can,
like the pull apart's enough.
yeah, I mean, if they can produce the match as tightly as they produced the pull apart, then no, it's going to look as good as it possibly can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So more cage dancing and dates, and then Malice is introduced, and we go to the title match. It's at this point in my notes that I just want to make a mention of this. For some reason, when JB's starting the announcements, the camera's focused on the entranceway. So JB's looking at the hard cam, which means you just get the side of his head, and it looks really weird, and I don't like it. I don't know why they're doing that. It's I think it's just my personal preference, really, but yeah. So Shamrock sort of drags himself to the ring. He's looking in fairly bad shape. As he gets in the ring, Malice jumps him. He sort of chokes him on the rope a bit. Shamrock rolls out, and Malice just sort of works him over on the floor. Back in, Malice keeps sort of working over the neck with sort of stomps and chokes. At one point, he gets a kind of cool looking move where he's standing on the second rope and has him in a sleeper. And then he gets a 2 off a leg drop, which I feel I should reference the fact that him getting two on a leg drop, it's kind of reminiscent of the time that Hulk Hogan hit his leg drop on him and he kicked out of it. Yeah, maybe that's just me, but maybe that's where he learned the technique from. He sort of copied Hogan's technique and then was surprised when someone else kicked out at 2.
Yeah.
So he goes to grab Shamrock by the throat, but Shamrock tries to turn it into an arm breaker, but he breaks that up with a good old Greco-Roman boot to the face. He then heaves Shamrock to the outside where he locks on a dragon sleeper. Back in, Shamrock locks him in kind of to an ankle lock when he tries to choke him with his boot. But Malice gets to the rope. Then Malice hits a nice couple of back suplexes, landing Shamrock on his back of on his bad neck. He goes for a vertical suplex, but Shamrock reverses that, and then follows up with a belly to belly for the win. You know what? After watching this match, I can see your aversion to Malice.
You know what's funny is actually I kind of liked Malice after this match. I thought it was a pretty good match. So a couple of things. The first thing is there's 3 title matches, and the world title is the first one. That made it feel the least important of the titles. The second thing is Shamrock came into this match with a disadvantage because he was attacked earlier and he was like a little bit injured. But I feel like this match would have been a lot more fun, intriguing, and worthwhile if it had just been like these just 2 dudes just fighting each other with like no injuries, just 2 dudes just fighting.
Yeah, so they're trying to book Malice as like this unstoppable monster. He's now been
But in
stopped
order for him to
twice
be
in 3
unstoppable,
weeks.
Shamrock has to be injured beforehand.
Yeah, but he's been stopped twice in 3 weeks, and it's like, okay.
And then Shamrock got lucky, and he kind of stole the victory.
Yeah, what they're trying to do with Malice. It would work better if they did it over a longer period of time. Just establish him first, because I know he's been referenced, it's the Wall from WCW, but it's not the Wall from WCW. It's the same guy, and there are people who will recognize him, but he's changed so much. He needs to be reestablished as to what this new gimmick is. And all they've done is they're like, oh, he's a monster that loses every time. They really want to push him. Give him the chance to establish himself. They've not done that very well, I don't think.
You're right, though. They should have had him win a few squash matches first to make him look like a credible threat.
Yeah, because if they'd have done that, I think I would sort of I would be more in line with your opinion on this match. Other than that, it's just a case of you attacked a guy, so he was really beaten down, and you still lost to him. It's kind of making him look, mid-card.
Really, it does make him look like mid-card because Shamrock has to be injured for the playing field to be more leveled.
Yeah. Uh, so
And then it was weird because this is half the show. Half the show was built up as, is Shamrock going to be okay? Is Shamrock going to be okay? And then he comes out and they go, I guess it's okay.
yeah, because sometimes with like those sort of things, I remember like when they did The Rock at was it Over the Edge 98, and they had to play his music through twice before he could make it out. Which was weird. He's supposed to be the heel, yet they were doing an injury angle with him. But yeah, doing something like that, the fact that he came out as soon as his music was played. I mean, granted, he was selling as well as he could, but yeah, give that sense of doubt of, oh, is he actually going to be able to do it? But
Right, right.
maybe they were just worried that they weren't going to hit their time. They finished the show with like nearly 10 minutes left on the air, so they did have some time to play with, but oh well. So yep, after a quick sort of cage dance, we get David Young out next as he challenges for the X title.
Why does he get a title shot? I call shenanigans.
Yeah, no, my notes say, how did he earn this match?
Yeah.
Last week he dicked all over, then lost to Apollo. How is that contender worthy in the slightest?
Because they think Bobcat is so hot, maybe.
I'm not. I mean, it's not that she's not pretty, but is she really that?
I don't think so. She doesn't
No.
float my boat. She ain't no Lacey Von Erich.
Yeah, she's fine, as I guess, but yeah. So as we stated, Bobcat is out with Young, and she is soaking in all the adulation, whereas Young looks like he wants to be there about as much as I want him to be there.
Good observation.
Which is apt. So yeah, when they get in the ring, she makes him carry her purse so she can throw kisses to the crowd. It's going to be like this again, isn't it? AJ is out next, and a zoom during his entrance shows the hard cam side of the ring has empty seats from about the third row back. Not the best thing you want to be showing on TV, but sometimes mistakes happen. Young starts with a sneak attack and some weak-looking punches, but AJ lands his feet on a backdrop and shows how strikes should be done, finishing up with a nice-looking drop kick. AJ reverses a full Nelson into an arm drag and hits a couple more for good measure. Young runs through him on a crisscross, but gets caught with a nip-up Rana that throws him to the outside. AJ catches him with 2 dive fake outs before just nailing him with a lariat on the outside. Why not? Why risk your neck against a guy who is probably not going to be your most credible contender? Back in, AJ tries for a springboard but gets shoved to the outside. That spot was gnarly and AJ did it really well. A Asai moonsault by Young, and he throws Styles back in for 2. Not the best Asai I have seen doing this podcast, and I think I've only seen one other. Bobcat is on her phone at ringside. We don't get the focus like we did on her last week. Maybe they've figured out that people are actually tuning in to watch the wrestling, or I don't actually have a way of completing that sentence. I've just gone ... in my notes. Forearm trade, and Styles flips out of German. A series of reversals leads to AJ being suplexed into the corner for 2. A really nice looking spot there. They keep harping on about Young being the largest competitor they have seen in this division. The division for whom they crowned the champion a week ago. So at best, you could argue there's 5 people. If you want to include the 6 man from the first show, 8 people. Which, I mean, you could count them as they beat the current champion a tag match, yet aren't here on this show competing for either the X title or the tag title. Just throwing that out there, because it's fair to mention. A crucifix gets 2 on Young, as does a Lab Magistral. Young hits a climb up insecurity for two. Bobcat gets some screen time as Young is on offense, which, you know what, at this point, I'm not going to complain about. Maybe they just want to show something that looks good. Back in the ring, he has AJ in the head scissors. He changes that to a chin lock. AJ fights out, but is caught in a power slam for two. A brainbuster gets two, so it's back to the chin lock. A super kick from AJ ends all that stupidness. AJ does his moonsault into a DDT. However, Young catches him, and it lacks the flow that the move usually has. He sort of kind of lands on his shoulder and then slides down. And sorry, I don't believe that AJ can't do that move better. He always seems so stilted the way he does it. The ability he's got, he could do it so much better. I'm convinced.
It takes two to do moves.
This is true, but yeah, the way Young sort of stalls on this one, it makes him look bad. But I'm sorry, the athleticism AJ has, I'm sure he could hit that moonsault perfectly and just slide straight into that DDT. The fact he stops in the middle every time always kills the momentum for me. And I just sort of look,
I see what you're saying.
Why not just hit the DDT?
Yeah. I think he does it for like anticipation. I don't
know. I mean, maybe it's just a personal preference of mine, but yeah.
Like Sting he'll grab you by the back of your head, he'll put you under his arm, and then he'll look around a little bit, and then he'll drop you.
Yeah, but the moonsault into it seems like just such a...
That does kill the momentum, but I don't feel like the moonsault into it is to get the momentum. I feel like it's more just to get the upper hand, like to get the advantage, because at that point the other person's beating him up, and so he moonsaults into getting the upper hand.
True, but yeah, no, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I get it.
So AJ picks up the momentum and he starts to break down the bigger Young. Young catches him in a full Nelson that he turns into a spine buster. On commentary, they state that that's his patented finish.
Actually, what they said was, quote, "That's his finishing hold," unquote. And I did not know that a spine buster was a hold.
That's some would say it is, but I feel that's pedanticness on your part, because a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, the finishing hold is whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess finishing hold is the same as saying finishing maneuver.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why you feel that way. I feel it's valid. I also feel it's equally.
Yeah, I feel like a hold. I feel like a hold is a submission.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why also, I mean, kind of off topic here, no holds barred matches really make me upset when they use weapons, because a weapon isn't a hold.
A little while ago, I had a row with someone on a wrestling forum. They were like, "I don't get why rope breaks still count in no disqualification matches." It's a case of, well, because they're not falls count anywhere matches. The ropes show where the edge of the ring is, and so while then it won't be disqualified, it still breaks the count. And so they were just
what about on that logic, what about a submission hold in a no disqualification match? Getting the ropes.
Yeah, they don't have to break it, but it's not going to win you the match.
But you can still use the ropes to pull yourself for leverage. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, the use of the ropes could technically part you out of the ring, so no, that doesn't count. But
all right. Anyways, he hits his finishing hold, which is a spine buster.
I mean, they say it's his finishing hold. We've seen 2 weeks in a row him use it and the person kick out of it.
He's not very good.
And what's worse is it's the best looking move in the entire match that he does both weeks.
Yeah, it's his best looking move for sure.
Being kicked out in 2 weeks in a row. No, okay, let's move on. So a top rope Frankenstein is turned into a second rope styles clash. That's
Did you know they said when he hit the Styles Clash? I've never heard this terminology before, but they said a tarantula into a pedigree.
yeah. I did catch that, and I sort of looked at it. I was like, I can see the
I
logic
can see
because
that. Yeah, I can see that too. But I've never, ever, ever heard that terminology before.
no, I mean, I've never would have never thought about it that way until they said it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Just like one time on SmackDown commentary, Taz taught me what STF stands for.
step over toe face.
Step over to hold face lock.
Uh, maybe that's where I heard it. But I knew that was what it stood for. But yeah,
I just know that because Taz said it one time.
yeah, it probably was Taz that I heard that from as well. Yeah. Um. So yeah, Bobcat is in the ring to get some cheers, but AJ just shoves her over.
Oh my gosh, he
Uh,
just shoved her down. This
yeah.
is total nonstop assault, I swear.
Yeah, there's a shot of
Yeah.
the cage dancer, but she isn't really dancing. She's more just shivering. Ah,
She had a fear for her life.
I don't know. Some of those TNA fans, maybe. Goldilocks is in the back with the rainbows. Gertner says things to
Oh,
Goldie
this
that
is it,
what?
what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. Some of the things he says, well, if you sort of looked at them written down, you'd be like, oh, that's quite charming. But there's something about the way he does it that they just couldn't sound any sleazier.
I liked
Uh,
when the first thing he said, it sounded so charming but also sleazy. When he
yeah.
said, I'm sorry, I didn't pay attention to anything you said. I was captivated by your beauty.
Yeah, I know. There are many people in the world that can make that sound charming, and Gertner somehow makes it sound like it couldn't be any sleazier. Um, which makes the terrible promo he cut last week all the worse. And yeah, we'll get on to what happens in just a second. So yeah, he says every team has been either beaten or incapacitated, so they should be the champions. Just going to state right here, we literally saw the hot shots earlier. No one has mentioned this. Um, he states that there is no opposition for the Rainbow Express. Again, the hot shots walking around backstage. The crowd have seen them in a match. We haven't. We just know they're there.
Well, he means, though, he doesn't mean every tag team in the world. What he means is every tag team in contention for the titles, even though we don't know who they all are. Because it was down to
Yeah.
two teams at this point.
Yeah.
It was down to AMW versus the Rainbow Express, the unnamed AMW, of course.
Yeah.
And the AMW was hurt, and everybody else was defeated.
Yeah, so he says that with no opposition, the Rainbow Express should be champions. And as you've alluded to, he kisses Goldilocks on his way out. I guess the way I guess it's been implied that they assaulted Harrison Storm, so what's a little sexual assault on top of that, I guess, at this point. Um,
Did they imply that? I guess they did, right?
they did, I think they did at some point, yeah. I think maybe we're looking at it with 2024 eyes, but I guess it sort of does solidify him as a sleazy heel, but isn't that now a felony?
I mean, something. Yeah, it's bad. So let's go in right from here on out. Let's make a pact here. Every scene where somebody gets sexually harassed or sexually assaulted, we're going to assume that that person okayed it before this happened on television.
I think that's the only way we can sort of get through it at this point. Yeah.
Unless we find out otherwise, we're going to assume it's consensual.
But
because it's
literally
really it gets bad with between Ed Ferrara and Joel Gertner. It gets bad.
But the first thing I've got written on the next line of notes is that as they walk to the ring, no one mentions that that's how that interview ended. It's just like, oh, 2002, you're a different time. I mean, granted,
Yeah.
2002 did give us the Raimi Spider-Man and the Songs for the Deaf album from Queens of the Stone Age, but so it wasn't all bad. But
it's like he grabs her and he sexually assaults her, and you're like, oh, you goose, you silly goose. Like everybody's just like, you rascal. Like it's not that big of a deal. And nobody really like thinks twice about it.
Yeah. So JB announced that the NWA has ruled there must be opponents in this match. So he brings out Jerry Lynn and AJ Styles. I like how AJ Styles is supposed to be the mystery partner, yet it's his music they're playing.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And AJ Styles was literally the previous match.
Yeah.
And they're like, he had such a hard fought victory against David Young.
But I just out of interest, I would be interested in knowing who ruled on it as we've established, Jim Miller's disappeared. Was it Barons?
They've been looking for him a few times. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was Barons that Jerry Lynn was bothering.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I said bothering. I meant asking.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, at this point, at this point in its history, TNA goes through a lot of authority figures in like a very short span of time. So, I don't know if it's best to ask that question or just leave it be.
It's our third
So
of
yeah,
three title matches.
Yeah. So Styles is coming out looking like he threw his back out trying to pull a good match out of David Young.
Yeah. Although one thing I did notice is AJ Styles was very, very like cut. Like his pectorals were really big. Like he was in really, not that he wasn't ever in good shape, but he was in really good shape here physically.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot like indie guys, they get into better shape when they go into a major promotion because they're no longer because they actually have the time and effort to train because they're not sort of working it around real life. The fact that AJ, yeah, looks like that, and at this time, I don't know. I don't think he would have been making great amounts on the indies, although he was working regularly.
No.
It sort of it says a lot about how committed he was to this that he looked as good as he does here.
Yeah, I'm surprised if he'd be making more than a hot dog and a handshake in these days, you know. I'm
I
sure
think
he
he'll make
was.
his,
I'm sure in NWA Wildside and TNA, I'm sure he's making something because Bill Burns was like an agent for a lot of guys and he's involved on both ends of it. He's like
yeah.
on the company side and on the guy side. So like I'm sure he worked out a pretty nice deal for some of his people, AJ included.
Yeah, because I mean, this is around the point that AJ turned around at $200-300 a week from the WWE, if I remember right. It might even have been slightly more than that. So even if it wasn't that amount of money, he was still earning something to make it worth him while not to sign that contract originally. This is another match that starts with a jump start. There's a few of these tonight, and it's I don't know. I feel like maybe it's like a lack of agent involvement, and the fact that I guess you've got like I think the last three have started off this way. Lynn fights back and drop kicks Lenny out. Bruce has AJ down in the corner. Bruce then gets backdropped onto Lane, who's on the outside. Lynn hits a dive onto both of them. Lynn then picks both of them up and runs out of the way as AJ hits a twisting crossbody to the outside. I just want to do a quick aside here. When was the last time we saw that happen? Where you've got the big group wipe out with the dive, the guy partnering with the guy doing the dive got out the fecking way like a sensible person would. Why would you stand there and let your partner take you out? So yeah, good on Lynn for doing something that looks incredibly sensible and we don't see enough of in modern wrestling. Back to the match. Somehow Bruce got straight up from that and just rams AJ into the barricade. I just want to ask here, how are the rainbows so fresh? I know AJ competed in the previous match, but they still had a match against a supposed, well, not top team, but two top guys, and it's showing absolutely zero lasting effects from that tag match with Buff and Apollo.
Yeah.
So Lynn,
Not much of a match, really.
oh, I mean, okay, so the X match went longer, but still, you've got two guys who look like Buff and Apollo wailing on the rainbows. You'd expect them to be sort of selling at least half as much as AJ, but it's not. It didn't really seem to be registering here.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
On
You're
the other
right.
hand,
I didn't
though,
think about that.
you don't want your heels selling too much. It's a really awkward line to have to
Well,
walk the way
also, if
that
you think
booked
about it
this.
like this too, the Rainbow Express wrestled 45 minutes ago, and AJ wrestled 10 minutes ago.
Yeah,
Not even 10
yeah, that
minutes ago. He was the next match.
yeah that is obviously a big part of it. Yeah. So back in, Lynn is trading off with Lane. Lane tries to get out of a waist lock by swiveling those hips, and is met with a flying head scissors. Lynn works over Lane in the corner and drops toe holds Bruce down low. Lynn then smashes Bruce's head down there a few more times for good measure, but doesn't get disqualified because it's for a vacant title. That's But three or four low blows with his partner's head, you'd think the referee would go, "All right, guys, we can't
And the
you
announcers
can't
on
do that."
commentary said that they liked it.
Yeah, by this point, I'm just like, they're gonna say what they're gonna say.
It's like I feel like they said, "Hey, let's have a gay tag team so we can make a whole bunch of gay jokes." Because it's like that's pretty cringe too.
You, did
It's not
you
as
ever have?
bad. It's not as bad as it once was though, with the Rainbow Express and commentary.
Yeah.
It's getting a little better.
Did you ever have the band Electric Sinks over there?
No, I mean not to my knowledge, but probably.
Yeah. Well, so so they'd be around this sort of time, sort of 2002, 2003 time. Then they had two big hits off their first album. The first was a song called Danger High Voltage, which is as a song, it shouldn't work, but it's one of those songs that's kind of like, oh, okay, that's pretty good. And then their second song is a song called Gay Bar. It's fantastic. It's just so camp, and it's like it could easily be just so homophobic, but it's just so brilliant. It's like actually that is pretty cool. Um, it's an interesting video to watch. You have like Abe Lincoln in the White House, and he stands up and he's just wearing hot pants, and it, it's I can't just without seeing it. It's hard to sort of describe it to someone, but yeah. And then they released a second album, the first of which was a Queen cover, where they literally danced on Freddie Mercury's grave and wondered why their career died.
Wow, crazy.
Which is, well, I say their career died. I went on the Wikipedia a while ago. 20 years later, they've released an album almost every year since. It's just a case of the Wikipedia entries after that Freddie Mercury song are, they released this album, this member left. They released this album, this member left. And it's literally that 20 times. But it shocked me that they still existed. Right, what was I? So Joel Gertner stops Lynn from going up top, and Lenny drags him back into the ring. Don really hates the kissing tag at this point. It's either being forced by someone producing it, or Don West is secretly a horrible bigot. I know,
Yeah,
I know
Don
what I'd
West was
like
the
it to
one
be.
who on the first week yelled, "You don't have to rub it in our faces."
Yeah, no, he's doing the same level here, and it's just I kind of tried to overlook it the first time because I was like, oh, he's new to this, and it's like, no, either it's being actively pushed on him to do this, or that's just how he is at this point. Um, and I know which one of those two I'd like it to be, but I don't like the fact that either of them's an option. Uh, Weirdly, at this point, there does seem to be a small chant for Bruce that's cut off as soon as Jerry leg drops him across the second rope, at which point they start chanting for Jerry instead. So AJ tags in, gets a spin kick, and gets two, and he's really selling from the David Young match. I mean, to be fair, I can feel his pain. I had to sit through that and write play by play for it.
And I can see
Uh,
how AJ hurt his back because he had to carry David Young through that whole match.
yeah. So yeah, no, we can all feel your pain, AJ. All corners of the globe.
I feel like I got more injured watching that match.
So Lynn is back in, and the announcers finally mentioned that he's the only guy not coming off a high stakes match at this point, which I mentioned earlier. I think we're going to go into when we break down this match in a minute. So yeah, second rope bulldog on Bruce leads to Lane breaking up the fall. Bruce sends Jerry into the ropes and Gertner grabs his leg, which is a stupid move on its face. If your guy throws someone into the ropes and you grab their leg, you're breaking your guy's momentum. Just something out there for anyone who ever considered being a manager or corner man in wrestling. It's just something to think about. Although Bruce at least still managed to take advantage of this by hitting a low blow while the referee is distracted by Gertner. So at least they managed to get something logical to come out of that stupid move. Tag to Lenny, but Jerry hits a jawbreaker and reverses something into a roll up. Jerry misses a drop kick and Lenny scoops him up into the Tiger Tamer. And AJ Styles clothesline puts the end to that. Bruce switches in without a tag and goes to work. Ferrara starts talking about how he'd fare in the ring. Please, Ed, just don't remind us. Oklahoma was a stain on the wrestling world that we do not need to start talking about again. Lenny is in and gets a long stalling suplex or two. And then he belts AJ off the apron for good measure. Bruce is in and walks into a roll up out of the corner. That may have won Lynn the WWF light heavyweight title, but it is not going to get the tag title here in the NWA, brother. Lynn and Bruce trade off with Bruce attempting a springboard sunset flip, but Jerry just drops to his knees for two. Jerry gets a flying head scissors, but he's dropped face first mid-rotation. Bruce works over his neck on the mat. He goes for a pile driver, but Lynn says nope. Second attempt, Lynn reverses into a cradle pile driver attempt that Bruce tries to backdrop out of, but Lynn rolls through for two. A reverse DDT, and both are down. So AJ is in on the hot tag as a house of fire. He gets two of Hurricane Run, a super kick and a lariat get broken up by Bruce. A facebuster on Styles gets broken up by Lynn, who hits the cradle pile driver on Lane before Hurricane Running Bruce to the outside. Styles climbs up top and hits a spiral tap, but not as well as he did last week. And that's all she wrote for this match. There is pyro going off all around the ring, and AJ is in the middle, holding both the tag titles. And then Lynn comes in, they embrace, and it's all good. So yeah, I'm torn on this whole thing. What did you think of it?
I don't know. It was wild. It was cool to see AJ do the double duty like that. But also like, I don't know. It was good. It was good. This is a very odd pairing. But then when I was watching, I was thinking out what an odd pairing it was. But then I'm like, at the same time, it kind of shows AJ getting the nod from a veteran, right? Because Jerry Lynn could have picked anybody. And he's like, this guy right here, this guy's good. I want this guy in my corner. So it's kind of getting the nod from the veteran, but it's also a weird combination.
Well, you say that, but after last week, I think it works really well because it's like, oh, well, I know what it's like facing this guy, and I didn't manage to beat this guy. So,
right.
Obviously, so if I pair with this guy, I'm pretty sure I could beat these guys one-on-one. And so if I can, he definitely can.
Because this guy's good. Exactly. Yeah. This guy's good. And I know how good he is firsthand because I was in the ring with him.
Yeah. So how do you feel about the fact that they just got slotted into this match? They didn't have to win anything. Because that's what irks me about this match.
I don't know. I mean, it would have been nice to see America's Most Wanted just go on into the tournament and win like a normal tournament. So we'll see where it goes and why they went with AJ and Jerry Lynn. It was weird that they got this like automatic buy into the finals. It was really weird, but whatever.
Yeah. I feel that the way they go with the titles might not have been the way they planned. Otherwise, yeah, the plans they had were odd if this stuck to the plan. Uh, so as we get the cage dancing, something is happening in the back, and they have found Jim Miller. He's been hogtied and has FU drawn on his massive gut. Uh, as someone who's recently put on like 5 stone, I feel massive was probably a bit harsh for me to use there.
It works. It's just funny that they wrote that on the stomach, and they wrote it kind of like on the side so the camera could pick it up.
Yeah.
That's massive good.
So we get recaps from last week that shows that the only thing that could beat the teal team in this next upcoming match is the power of celebrity.
Woo.
But it's true, though. Like we said last week, although the moves were different, the finish was pretty much the same. Of the celebrity gets involved and helps the face to win. Everyone gets a separate entrance. I don't know why this jumped out at me, but apparently Brian Christopher is over the cruiserweight limit. I don't know why that sort of confused me. But I guess because I always think Brian Christopher, well, he competed for the light heavyweight title because Taka Michinoku in 1997. So, yeah.
I think the WWF was higher, the limit.
Yeah, but it was still under 230, and he's announced at 232 there.
Oh.
I think the WWF limit was 227, if I remember right. But I could be wrong. So we have brawling before the bell is rung and the heels are sent to the outside. They've paired off and are fighting through the crowd. Yeah, it's different. It's not something we've seen yet in TNA, all this crowd brawling. So that's something different. You've got Hall and Jarrett fighting in the cage dancing cages, which is it's something that happened.
Yeah, that is true.
Back in the ring, backdrop and a super kick on Krush means Christopher is set to fly, but he doesn't land the hip hop drop and gets dumped out of the ring. Krush then turns around into Scott Hall. Scott reverses a hip toss reversal into a chokeslam, but gets clubbed in the back by Jarrett. Hall and Jarrett beat on each other all around the ring. Christopher tags in and hits the 10 punches in the corner. I just want to say this right now. So there are people who claim the Irish Whip is stupid because it's a blatantly fake move, which, especially the way some people do it, is true. But no one seems to scrutinize the 10 punches like that. You're punching a guy in the face 10 times. They're not bruised, they're not bleeding. Are you pulling your punches? If you're pulling your punches, why are you doing 10 of them? Also, how are you doing 10 of them when the referee doesn't get you out the corner before counting to 5? No, it's just it's a little thing. I can see why people do it, but you think about it for more than about 10 seconds, it's frustrating. At least to me it is. So Jarrett dodges a corner charge, but Hall tags back in. Hall knocks Christopher off the apron and hits heads with Jarrett. So Krush tags in and hits a missile dropkick on Hall. Jarrett back in, and they are cranking up the heat on Hall there. Krush is in and he takes down Hall for 2. Hall rolls through a Jarrett top rope crossbody, but Jarrett quickly is back on offense. Hall firing back somehow ends up with him in a Jarrett sleeper. Hall reverses, but a jawbreaker and a back suplex, but both of them down. Jarrett goes to the wrong corner. This brings Krush and Brian Christopher over while the referee tries to separate them. Hall is trying to tag out, but Christopher again is in the wrong corner fighting with Krush. So Hall's partner not there. Brilliant tease that. Only bettered by the fact that Krush just kind of strolls in when the referee's head is turned. Just like, nope, I'm the legal man. People say heats and tags are boring. When you've got moments like that can be pretty fun. An axe kick on Hall, but Krush has a German lock applied instead of going for the cover for some reason. Hall gets crushed in his shoulders and drops both of them down, and Jarrett is in, and Hall manages to clothesline both guys down. He goes for the tag and gets tagged square in the face. I'm really not sure what to make of this. Hall knocks Jarrett into the ref and fights off Jarrett and crashes. Christopher just sits on the apron watching Hall and smacks him in the face for good measure. Christopher goes up top, but Hall just launches him into the ring. He starts doing a number on Christopher. He sets up for the edge on Crush and hits it, but Jarrett breaks up any attempt at a cover. Hall goes for the edge on Jarrett, but Christopher breaks that up, and it leads to Jarrett hitting the stroke on Hall. One hip hop drop later, and that is a loss for Scott Hall. After this, apparently Brian Christopher and K Crush, they're all buddy buddy now. So Jarrett on the mic, he claims that he's beaten Hall in '95, he did again in '97. He saw him out of WCW, and now he's going to see him out of the NWA. So as Hall rolls to the outside, Jarrett grabs the trophy and smashes it on Hall's back. I guess less Chekhov's trophy, as I said earlier, and more Jarrett's trophy. So the stretcher is out, and as they are loading Hall up, he gets an elbow drop from Jarrett off the apron. Jarrett thinks he was screwed in show one, so he is going to try and make it up here. He dumps Hall off the stretcher as they're going up the ramp and sort of walks to the back. So as the announcers are going through the card for next week, Jarrett runs back out and goes to attack Hall some more as the pay-per-view goes off the air. Yeah, that was an eventful main event.
Jefft Jarrett said NWO instead of NWA for a second. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, he's sort of. I mean, you can, in that situation, you can sort of be like, oh well, he's quite blown up after a match at that point.
Yeah, and they're close. The letters are very close.
And him and Hall were involved in the 2000 version of the NWO. So yeah, you can see you can understand the confusion there.
Yeah.
So any particular thoughts on this match?
Not really. I mean, it was good. Brian Christopher didn't really fit in as a babyface, so I was kind of glad to see him turn heel here. And they did a good job of having Christopher avoid being actually in the match.
Well, you say that he did have a short period in the match.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit he did.
And they did do that big sort of crowd brawl at the start where him and Crush went off in one direction and all the cameras were focused on Jarrett and Hall instead. But yeah, like you said, because as soon as he sort of hit Hall, the first thing I thought was, how you said about how you just don't buy him as a babyface, which I can understand. He's sort of, especially more this week than last week's. Something about his entrance, I was like, oh, that is quite irritating. Just that weird thing he does with his arms outstretched and he shakes his head a little. That's quiet. Yeah, I could see that being the sort of thing that would make you want to claw a guy's eyes out. And also interesting to notice that the last 2 weeks he was wearing white. This week he was wearing black when he turned heel. So symbolism. Yeah. So they've announced next week we've got the 6-man, I was going to say cruiserweight then, 6-man X Division contenders match where they will decide the next 6 contenders for the X Division title. We of course have Shamrock facing Anari, and they've also announced your favorite, the Flying Elvises, will be back.
Woo, that's cool. Interesting.
Yeah, and you also have K Crush versus Herbie Sadler. So there's they've certainly got some variety on there. So do you have any sort of final thoughts about the match? Not the match, the event.
The event, it was pretty eventful. Like I said, it was exciting. All 3 titles were on the line, and none of them were in the main event, which was kind of silly. It was a good show. A lot of matches, a lot of action, a lot of stars. Right now it's kind of a mess. They just kind of took what they can get, the scraps from WCW, who is on the indie scene. I want to get more into the women's division on the next part, but yeah, it was pretty good.
So out of our 2 options, which one are you going with? Is it Bowling Shoe Ugly
the best show? So I'll say it was the best night in the history of our beautiful sport.
That's crazy because I really didn't care for this show. Like I said to you earlier, when I lost some of my notes, I had to go back to rewatch some of it, and ended up binge watching Dairy Girls just to while procrastinating. I there are some good things on this show. I mean, I ragged on David Young, but the X title match is still fairly good because it's AJ Styles. But no, I thought this show was, so we really are at two ends of the spectrum on this
I
one.
thought it was the best show, but sometimes we'll see.
I think my view on the first one especially is more, I was looking at it just while there was nothing particularly stand out on its own, the first one I was like, oh well, it's the first one, so there's the history there, and the second one the main event was just enough for me to be like, okay, this is going to be a good show, because it also started off with someone I liked, and there's a couple of good bits in the middle. But yeah. There was just not that strong match on this one that really won me over as such. It's not that there weren't good matches, it's just that there weren't there's nothing on this show that I think I'd really want to go back and revisit. As proven by the fact that when I had to go back and revisited it, I ended up procrastinating all night.
True.
So there we have it. It's another split decision between the two of us on how we felt in the show. Yeah, all good. So that's been us for this week. Don't forget, you can keep up with all our comings and goings. We are on social media, ETA TNA Pod, except Facebook, where we're ETA TNA Pod 1. So, unless you've got anything else to say, Sam, you got anything you want to plug?
Just follow me on social media at Funky Sam Medina, and check out other cool stuff at hypotheticalcomedy.com.
Well, there you go. You can check out all my stuff at el.j.comedy on pretty much all the socials. I do have a Linktree on the Escaping the Asylum Linktree. If you don't want to catch me in person at the minute, my social appearances are pretty much I do the weekly quiz at the Traveller's Joy in Rayleigh in Essex. So if you want to come down, you're always welcome to be there. Yeah, they're friendly enough, even if it's a night I'm not there. But Thursdays are the best, just because tonight I'm there. We are about to head over to Patreon, so if you are one of our paid up members, we will see you shortly. If not, we will be back next week, where we will be covering the Six-Man, the Flying Elvises, and Krush against a NASCAR guy. All that and more. Till then, he's been Sam, I've been LJ. It's been emotional. Escaping the Asylum, a look at the history of NWA TNA, has been a Smart Alex production. It's been presented by Elliot James and Funky Sam Medina, and it's been edited and produced by Adam